It's Friday night. Maybe you did your Black Friday shopping. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you're thinking about those Cyber Monday deals. Maybe you're going out to see Napoleon tomorrow. Well, forget about all of that because Sportswire Radio is right in the smack of the middle of the weekend here in the holidays and some. And we're going to talk all the latest happenings here in the world of sports. And to kick things off, we're going to get you ready for Survivor Series and recap the week that was in wrestling with our resident wrestling analyst who dabbled very briefly in that world. He is also the host of the Hockey Fan Chat. His name is Mr. Randy Dillon. Randy, hope you had a very last month happy Thanksgiving as we just celebrated U.S. Thanksgiving. And hope that you're doing well with us here and you give us your hard-hitting analysis as you always do here in the world of professional wrestling.
Thanks, Tom. First off, I want to wish all you Americans a happy Thanksgiving yesterday. Hope you had a great day. And I don't know about you, but we had a great Full Gear pay-per-view last Saturday. Survivor Series, War Games, a lot of big storylines to cover. I'm excited.
Me too. I'll tell you what, it has been quite a week in the world of wrestling. So I guess since you mentioned it, and we'll definitely talk about what happened in SmackDown, we'll talk about where we go with Survivor Series in a few minutes. But I mean, so what was your impressions of Full Gear? I mean, obviously, Adam Cole and MJF were continuing, I guess, this storyline here. Samoa Joe was supposed to get this crack at MJF for the title. We didn't quite see Ronda Rousey in AEW, but we're seeing her in Ring of Honor. But talk about some of the things here that caught your interest last week at Full Gear.
Full Gear is definitely the match between Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page. A gruesome match, very good. But I think we could have done without the blood dropping in Hangman's mouth. I think that is a hell.
I think that's the AEW calling card, though. You know, obviously our buddies in the IMF certainly dabble in blood, but in AEW, that's their calling card is blood. What AEW pay-per-view isn't without blood, Randy, at this point?
I don't mind the blood, but I just think that I think I heard something where you pour your own blood into someone's body. That can almost kill someone.
Well, hopefully. I mean, certainly it reminds me of when I was in health class back in high school and college, and it makes me think about those HIV things they would talk about, those other things. But, you know, anything, I guess, to, enhance the match, I suppose, Randy, I suppose.
Exactly. The other thing is all eyes on timeless Toni Storm now. She's run that division, well-deserved. Julia Hart with a big win to become the TBS champion. To see how that will go. Very good match between Jericho and Omega versus the Young Bucks, who are teasing.
They continue Jericho and Omega as a team. There was maybe some doubt in the minds of fans, but they are continuing.
Then we got the 6-man match with Darby, Sting, and Adam Copeland. Edge still feels weird seeing Adam Copeland again. It's pretty much his kids. And
you're going to have to keep getting used to that, Randy, over the next several months on Sportswire, because I have a feeling Adam Copeland is going to be Adam Copeland for a while.
Exactly. And then the big news, Will Ospreay signing with AEW. And
which we didn't really think was going to happen. I mean, we saw him in Impact about a month or so ago, and we were talking about it, and I don't think he was the name we thought.
Definitely not, but I think for AEW, this is going to be an interesting move because he's going to stay in the UK. He's going to do things out there. How much airtime he's going to get on American television, him coming in, because I think that was a big thing where he wanted to not let his family move with him. You see the likes of Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, even guys like Gunther, now Kaiser, who have really Alexander Wolf back in the day, William Regal, Fit Finlay, where they have to pretty much pick up their whole life and move, where Will Ospreay's in the opportunity where some of these guys wish they had, but how is that going to affect his career where he's going to get that television time coming Dynamite every week or every couple of weeks? That's going to be interesting there. Then the main event, MJF versus Jay White, great match. The story was good. The thing is, this is the problem again with AEW. You hyped up Jay White so much. What are you going to do with him now? Now they have this tournament going on where they can give him the win, but at this point, you killed all his momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we spoke about, and obviously MJF now, which I guess maybe for some it's hard to believe that he's been champion there and he retains. Obviously, maybe he hasn't been as impressive as some other champions, but he has been champion for a year. But you almost felt like maybe this was the moment you'd maybe pull the trigger with Adam Cole, maybe making the turn, but they're, I guess, continuing it for a little while. I would imagine eventually they're going to make this turn, but it looks like they're going to continue for a little while longer with it.
It makes sense, and I think the big thing now is he still has the title. It gotta be pretty close. He's either going to resign with AEW or he has signed, but they haven't made it official yet. Because I
Yeah,
don't.
I agree with you on that because the contract is what, January it's supposed to end. I mean, we're now going into December. I mean, I would be hard pressed to find that he hadn't re-signed, or I even go further and say I'll throw totally out there, Randy. Maybe he re-signed months ago, and they're trying to play the internet audience because we know AEW is very big into the internet wrestling crowd.
Exactly. They're trying to pull that swerve to say
Yep.
we're building up this game, but I have to think at this point he's going to sign there because again, it doesn't make sense to give this guy all the push. We saw it was with Brett back in '97 when he was going to leave. They were building up
Yep.
for him and Sean, and look, everyone saw Sean was going to get the
Well,
big
I'll
role.
even go after that. I mean, Jeff Jarrett was the Intercontinental Champion 2 years later and didn't have a contract. His contract ran out, and he already signed with WCW. And WWF, the front office, namely Jim Ross, actually kind of let his contract slip. And Vince Russo, who at the time had just went from WWF to WCW, knew about this, and they were able to pull a fast one. And Vince McMahon wound up having to pay an exorbitant amount of sum of money, something like $250,000 to $300,000 that he was owed between pay-per-view money and other things in order to actually drop the title. So I would think at this point, knowing that history, that we wouldn't be going through that here with MJF.
Oh, absolutely. And then the Alundra Blaze Medusa
Yep.
angle where she
Mm-hmm.
dropped the title in the trash can. Definitely, I gotta think
Christian 2005, even if you go
Yep.
back to remember Taboo Tuesday, he actually already signed with TNA, yet
Yep.
he was still advertised to wrestle. That was a little weird. So I mean, these things happen.
Oh, absolutely. So definitely, we'll see what happened there. But the match announced at World Ends, Samoa Joe versus MJF. I tweeted out this. These guys can put on a great match, but
Yep.
this match was already advertised and given to us on free television.
Correct.
What's gonna make this match different?
It's on pay-per-view.
I get that, but I think the problem with AEW is, and this is something W has shown, is if you want a big match, you can't give it for free unless it's a big event, unless it's a
Unless
big
it's like a special, unless
Yeah.
it's something where it's a different thing, you're promoting something. It's one of those very rare moments. I agree with you that WWE has always been good at knowing how to slow burn and how to promote, whereas AEW has been good at delivering the surprise, but they're never good at promoting anything other than that.
Exactly. The only thing I can think of maybe that they've gotten away that one time with that free match on television was Goldberg versus Hogan, and when Hogan
Nitro, yeah,
Nitro when Goldberg won the title, but they had a big venue there with the
I
hype of
think
it.
also, yeah, you could go back a few times in the Attitude Era, I think, where Mankind took the title from The Rock. It was taped. I mean, you can go, halftime heat during the Super Bowl. I mean, you can go back in some instances. Triple H and Chris Jericho opened up Raw, and they kind of did a swerve with a title change. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can go back. I don't think it happens as much now because it was a different world 20, 25 years ago because TV ratings were so much more than they are now. So I agree with you, though, that the larger point is that whatever audience that you have, you really want them to use the TV time to promote, especially a company like AEW that doesn't have the streaming rights that WWE has, to be able to take that audience and to make them want to go buy your show to watch that match.
100%. You hit the nail on the head there, Tom.
Well, that's kind of what we're in the business for. Sportswire. We actually do a lot of wrestling
Yeah,
coverage, and we kind of know that here. We take our clips on
exactly.
social media and we promote
Yeah.
people to come on YouTube. Okay, anything else in AEW? Now, Ronda Rousey, I got to touch upon real quick. I mean, you like her, part of Ring of Honor, not AEW. What do you make of the Ronda Rousey situation, real quick?
The Ronda Rousey situation, I think, is more of a tease for her to see, do I want to get in the wrestling ring? Do I still want to go? I think she still has that itch, but I think she realized her time in W to be a big face has come to an end where other places it can still come. The only thing that I think she got to worry about, I mentioned this last week, Duddy was a little bit more protected with her. They really
Uh,
made sure it was more clean. AEW, we've seen, I think there was a post at her at an independent show. She got dropped on her neck in the back of her
yeah, we
head.
spoke about that last week on the show, and you got a variety in women's talent that Athena you've got in Ring of Honor. You've got obviously in AEW. You mentioned Tony Storm, Ruby Soho, Dr. Britt Baker, Soraya. I mean, there's a large roster of women's talent. Julia Hart, you just mentioned, Anna Jay. I mean, it's a large list of women's wrestlers there that they're going to work a certain style, and they're not going to be as willing to go along and play
Nope.
ball because WWE looks at Ronda Rousey from a different way than AEW will probably utilize her.
100%. Because at the end of the day, she's still a mega star. I know people say, "Oh, she's fallen off her rope. She's not hyped." I still think she is still one of the top female athletes, like
No,
unfortunately
I think
performance.
I agree with you that she is, but I think because it's been what 6 7 years since she's been in a UFC ring, I don't know necessarily if she maybe has that same aura because you've seen her so much in a wrestling ring, if that makes sense. Like you look at Logan Paul, right? Logan Paul, WWE has done a phenomenal job in kind of using him as an attraction, right? Ronda Rousey came not from the same world exactly, but the point is that she was a draw like that on a much grander and much more forceful scale, to use the Brute Force's nickname. But the point is that I think that maybe how many people really think of Ronda Rousey still as a UFC fighter, if that makes sense.
That is true, and I think the other thing as well is she willing to play ball, or does she want it about her? Does she want to be the face, or does she want to promote others? 'Cause I think near the end of her time in WWE, it was more of she was kind of trying to help talent, push talent, give them that opportunity, like Shotzi, her friend Shayna Baszler, Liv Morgan. But I
Yep.
think here she still wants to be the big fish, and I think there are people in that AEW locker room, heck, that Ring of Honor locker room that might think,
Yeah, listen, I
no,
mean, I agree with you 1,000% of that. Before I get to a couple of comments, is that I think that she's going to go in there and it's going to be a locker room that's going to be probably not sure what to make of her. They're certainly going to want to, in a sort of ways, maybe test her in certain spots and certain things. And I don't think she's coming in there and, especially after coming off the CM Punk situation, that they're going to just allow her to waltz in here and kind of do what she wants creatively. I think that's a great point. And if you are out here on Sportswire Radio, we have a brand new blog, by the way, which we're using. Well, it used to be the Sports Report blog, but now we've renamed it because we're actually using the Sportswire Radio blog to promote some of our upcoming shows. You can check us out on Tumblr at Sportswire Radio. We just had two big posts recently. The first one, because Randy, now we actually have a Sportswire Radio
no.
Hall of Fame. So we've actually started to try to get the word out because I've had so many people on at this point in sports. Where I think it's like last I counted, it's between 500 and 700 people.
Oh,
So
no.
now, yeah, it's that many. Yeah, I know it's crazy to think in 5 years, but we have Justin Parsley, who's inducted into the Hall of Fame. He's coming back in a few weeks, and on December the 20th, we just posted today that Bentley, who is the BTW and GTM World Champion, is coming back 8 o'clock British Standard Time. So you can read about that. Also, check us out on YouTube at the link above, and also if you want to listen to some shows like when Randy has the Hockey Fan Chat, or other shows like the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals when Chris Pizzea comes on, the Baseball Banter and the Devil's State of Mind, our buddy Neil Villapiano. All you have to do is go to sportswireradio.org and hit either that watch now or that listen live button so you can watch us here, or if you want to listen to us, you can do that as well. So those are some things here that you can do to support us. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, and the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station. I want to say hello to my buddy Ron. Ron is here, and he also likes to say, I just got into Swerve Strickland today. His entrance has me sold. So anything you want to say? One more
That was
thing?
brilliant.
Yep.
The entrance was brilliant. He's a star in the making. If there's one
Yeah,
person you
he's
can,
come a long way in like 6 or 7 months. You think of him when he went from tag teaming to Keith Lee, where now like you kind of feel like he's, I don't want to say like an LA Knight in terms of where he'll eventually go, but I think he's a player. There's no question about it.
100%.
Well, we'll certainly talk more about him for sure, but I obviously, in the amount of time that we have left, I got to talk to you about Survivor Series, and there's a lot to talk about here. Now, the first things first, I think, Randy, you kind of got it right, because Randy Orton, we didn't get to see him physically on Raw, but it's announced that he's going to be on the team of Cody Rhodes, and obviously it was so funny to see Jey Uso's reaction there. They're going to basically battle off with the Judgment Day and the rest of them. And first of all, what is your opinion then of Randy Orton finally returning here, which I almost feel like it was never going to happen, but I guess they did it the right way here in Chicago tomorrow. I think it'll be his first time we'll see him on TV, I believe now in 16 months, if I'm not mistaken.
Listen, a lot of people, including myself, have said this. We may have seen the end of Randy Orton, but definitely it is great to hear he will be back. And his first game is going to be War Games. I was at the 2018 NXT
I heard
War
you talk
Games,
about that. Yep.
and that was something. That War Games match is something else. Like 2 rings, how it all worked, incredible. Now, I think it was the right move for W to do it on Monday, because if the 5th opponent member was hidden, who do you think we're going to hear? CM Punk. And if it wasn't CM Punk, I think they were worried the crowd was going to turn. So the right move to bring Randy Orton back in. Jey Uso's face said it best, because he knew he was the last person to wrestle Randy Orton.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, I don't know if that was done intentionally, probably was, but seeing his facial reaction was just like, that's one of those you're going to remember for a long time.
Exactly. And listen, this War Game match it's really going to be interesting with all the dynamics we have. Now you have your War Game veterans and Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, who were part
Balor,
of
right?
who were part of last year's War Game, but then you add the new dynamics of Finn Balor, JD McDonough, Damian Priest. I'm interested what Dom can do in the War Games. Cody Rhodes, with Dusty Rhodes' history being a part of War Games. Seth Rollins, Jey Uso there last year. So definitely it's going to be a fun match, and the return of Randy Orton going to be good. But I honestly think Team Judgment Day will be walking out with a win.
And is that because of Jey Uso?
Not because of Jey Uso. I think Jimmy or Solo is going to come in and somehow cost either Cody or Jey. They're going to somehow get involved, because we saw last week Cody Rhodes putting his business in the middle of Solo trying to beat up LA Knight, and I definitely think they want to build Jimmy versus Jey for next year's Mania. So,
well, it's funny that you said that, because I believe yesterday or today was the 30-year anniversary of Survivor Series 1993, where they started the build of Bret Hart versus Owen Hart for WrestleMania. So small world, but I'm curious on Randy Orton for a second. And Randy Orton coming back in a spot like this, is this the right spot for him, knowing that he hasn't returned and been in a ring in 16 months? Is this kind of WWE doing this in a way that he doesn't have to go out there and work a singles match for 15 or 20 minutes, and we're not quite sure what we can get out of him yet? Probably going to be some type of ring rust, even though it's Randy Orton. But is this the right way to kind of pencil him back in? And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
At first, I was worried, but I think it is the right way, because we know I think most likely he's going to be the 5th person the last person entering the match.
Right.
And he'll get his spots in the RKOs, the DDTs. You're not going to see him
slapping the mat. Yep.
You're not going to see no crazy table spots, or they're going to try to make sure he's in a ring. And at that point, you can kind of put him to the side. You can kind of push him away, give him some break to see how it works. So he's not going to do a lot of the heavy lifting in this
Yeah,
match. So I think it's a good move.
I was wondering your thoughts on that as somebody that's actually been in a ring, and I was curious. I kind of thought the same, but I figured I'd ask you the stupid question anyway, Captain Obvious question, just because of the fact that he hasn't been in a ring in so long, and obviously it's a long match, but you're probably expecting him not to work this match as much as others. And I'm curious. Then you mentioned Dom Mysterio. I think Dom might be the most interesting person here in the match for whatever reasons.
Oh, definitely he is. The ability he has, he's seen war games as well with Ray being in
Yep.
WCW back in the day, seeing last year's war games. Definitely I could see him maybe even starting the match and going the distance.
You know what?
He
I
had
think
that endurance.
there's a lot of interesting storylines here. You still got Drew McIntyre just equating himself into the Judgment Day factor. Damian Priest has still got the briefcase there. You've got Seth Rollins, who, oh, by the way, is the champion. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting factors here. But I wanted to ask you real quick, and Carlito and Santos Escobar was supposed to be Carlito's first match in nearly 13 years in a premium event. I didn't realize it had been that long because we've kind of seen him sporadically in different things, but I mean, like, what happens here now? I mean, I kind of am like a little confused.
This was confusing because I really thought this is something they were going to build in time
Yep.
between Escobar and Dragon Lee. Cause definitely Dragon Lee could have come to the honor of Rey Mysterio. I thought it was a great homage for Carlito, his first match, and unfortunately getting pulled. Maybe he actually is hurt, and they still wanted to give Santos this opportunity because his work right now on the mic is brilliant. His character, how he's obsessed. The fact is how much Rey Mysterio meant to him, but hurt. But even how he came out of the crowd and attacked Carlito with that smile and like that bad guy persona was great. But I think it's more of we want to give Santos this opportunity to really run with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just the fact that we haven't seen Carlito in a ring as long as we have in a premium event, and then kind of the LWO is going by the wayside here, but you brought Carlito back specifically for the LWO. Is that coincidence or just a thought or two on that?
The LWO that in a weird position as well because from what I could tell, I really thought they would be going with Santos. They would be somehow slowly going with Santos, saying, Santos, you were right. We should not have disagreed with you. But right now, it's kind of like they're kind of left on the wayside. Not so much Selena Vega, but the other two members, where they're kind of now getting forgotten. What are they going to do with how much TV time are they going to have or be seen? Because you really don't know what's going to come. Are they going to be backing up Santos tomorrow and hoping he gets a win? Who knows?
Well, it's an interesting point there. Very interesting point. And I was also curious since we ended the SmackDown show with this kind of, I guess you would say, dissension with with Becky and Charlotte, and obviously we know that's a well documented history there. Where you mentioned Brett and Sean about 10 minutes ago, and I guess the women's version of Brett and Sean, although thankfully not as kind of out there and well documented, but still definitely probably right up there as the closest comparison that we would have is Becky and Charlotte. They used to be best friends, and obviously it's well documented. About 3 or 4 years ago, they kind of split up, and they certainly have gone on different paths, but they're on this team here and supposed to face off against Damage Control. But it seems like there's dissension there, and Bianca and Shotzi are kind of in the middle. And, what do you make of that dynamic in the War Games matchup on the women's end?
There's a lot of interesting stories in this War Games match. Speaking with Charlotte and Becky, I hope it doesn't mean down the road we're going to see another one of these two matches.
That's exactly what I thought. I thought, here we go again. We're going Becky and Charlotte, aren't they?
They're great talent. They've done a lot of work, but there's so much other talent you can use for them both. I rather see more Bianca Belair getting more Charlotte facing, hey, listen, me and Becky, we had a problem last year, but we're able to put your ego to the side because we want to get a win here. And then you got the other side of it of Damage Control. Are they playing Bailey?
I was about to say that Bailey, it seems like, they're slow burning that kind of in the opposite of the Adam Cole MJF situation, but you feel like that, eventually something's going to hit the fan there.
I think for this, Bailey made an interesting tweet earlier. It was a picture of saying I also have someone, and it was a picture of Mercedes Monet,
Yeah, I knew you were
aka
going there. It
Sasha
was all over
Banks.
Twitter today. Yeah, I mean, you know, I
Now, this doesn't mean Sasha Banks is returning, ladies and gentlemen, but this is just either Bailey trying to get us all rattled up or they're looking at a bigger picture
well,
for
I
something else.
suppose it's a break in the CM Punk Twitterverse talk. I guess
That's
that's.
true there as
I
well.
mean, I guess that's you never say never at this point, but I'm very skeptical that Mercedes Monet, aka Sasha Banks, would actually be back in the WWE. I'm just very skeptical about that. But I do think that Bailey and Damage Control eventually are going to be sayonara. And then I want to ask you on Gunther and The Miz. I mean, does The Miz have a chance here tomorrow, or are we just going to see the same old results?
Well, this is a tough one. Well, first things first, this is a big match on a live premium event in a very long time for the Miz. I think
Yep.
going back to his matches with Shane McMahon at WrestleMania
Thir-
35 in
Yeah,
2019.
I think, yeah, 35. That
So
18-19 era. Yep.
and the Miz, and especially what the Miz has done in the last few
Couple months.
years,
Yep.
where he has put over talent, he's worked well on his skill to try to help others exceed. He's really what you say the company guy who wants to do best for the company. And I don't think the Miz is going to win the IC title, but there's a this they put a seed of doubt in my head where Miz is still that bad guy who will do whatever he will do to win, and we saw with the low blow on Monday.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think you take the Intercontinental title off him for the Miz. I don't know where you go with that. I mean, I think was it you that said maybe it might have been you that maybe he's the guy you could seriously have a conversation with to take the title off Roman. I don't know if that's really the play, but I don't think he should lose the Intercontinental title here. I just not to the Miz. I don't think the Miz needs it. I mean, he's okay. We've brought him back. He's relevant again, but I think it's kind of the classic story of the veteran guy who's brought back in to certainly help a talent, continue to further his story, solidify himself as a burgeoning top guy that maybe you could put him in a conversation of being in a semi-main event at WrestleMania next year. That's kind of how I see it. I could be wrong. And then I want to ask you before I get to closing thoughts and move on. We'll get to the rest of the Sportswire team here in about 5 to 10 minutes here. So, I mean, Grayson Waller, Austin Theory, and LA Knight and KO. I mean, where are we going here with this?
Sadly, this is just a filler of time because I don't know if really they. I think they're really just trying to figure out what to do with all four. It sounds like I think KO and LA Knight are going to be working with Logan Paul in the near future. And I think the Grayson Waller and Austin Theory tag team is it's something fun to watch. They're hilarious what they do and how they interact. They're comical bad guys. They're good talent. I think they kind of now have something they can work with because they brought up Grayson Waller, had his first big match with Edge, but then he got up and down. They didn't really know where to put him in. Austin Theory, they dropped the ball with him after his win to John Cena at WrestleMania, and they couldn't really get him going. And I think right now these two are in a groove. They're doing some great work. Could they win the tag team titles? Maybe, but I like where this is heading between the two of them.
Yeah, I think very fascinating. I do want to say hello to our buddy, Mr. TBK, who asked about a post Survivor Series show tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do it because we actually have a segment tomorrow right around the time of Survivor Series. I don't even know if you were available for it anyway. We have on Mr. Alan Michaels of Tennessee Backyard Wrestling. He was just in the main event of Rampage show number 155, and he's requested a microphone after our guest yesterday, Armageddon Shane Davidson, has said a few different things. It actually challenged him to a last man standing match. And the trendsetter, Alan Michaels, is actually going to address that and address a number of things that Mr. Davidson had said. So I appreciate that, Mr. TBK, but going to have to rain check you on Survivor Series. But possibly, maybe the Royal Rumble, we could definitely do something. Or maybe the AEW show. We'll have to stay tuned for that. But definitely hope you're well, and I appreciate your time. Anything else you want to go over WWE related that we should know about going into Survivor Series that we'll certainly recap next week?
The two other things are Zoe Stark and Rhea
And
Ripley.
Rhea Ripley.
I think this is going to be a great match, but Rhea's not dropping the title here. Let's be real. I
Yep.
think this is more just Zoe Stark to get that big opportunity to see she's done some great work, where to go. And then I guess a $1 million question we'll finally be getting an answer for. Will CM Punk return to a WWE ring? Personally, I don't think it's going to happen. I think if you want to make a big impact and if he is returning, wait till Rumble with that more suspense
But I don't
there.
even know. We have no. No, if you believe Twitter, they're talking about Cult of Personality being re-released, and they're talking about, the CM Punk, and maybe that's the clue. But I mean, I think to me that was kind of put to bed with Randy Orton being the fifth man.
Yeah,
I don't see it right now.
it absolutely is. If they were going to make a return, it could have been him at War Game because Cody had a friend and he could have been that friend. Definitely there they could have played or they could have waited more because I think but the one thing is I'm interested they were thinking Shinsuke Nakamura had an open challenge for tomorrow, but it hasn't been publicly advertised. I think maybe that was the original plan, but it got scrapped the last second. But we'll see what happens. But I think at this point, WWE is doing really well. You don't need Punk to come in and for the
He
push.
needs them more than they need him at this point. If
Exactly.
he's going to continue his career or prove himself to be anything of anything, it's really about him needing them. I don't think they need him at all. They've certainly shown in their brand, in their promotion that, they don't need him. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm with you. I don't see it. I mean, maybe last week I would have thought differently, but right now I just don't see it. Last thing I want to ask you before we move on to closing thoughts is anything on the NHL front. The New Jersey Devils, to me, last week we spoke about the Islanders struggling, but the Islanders have played a little bit better since we've last spoke. But the New Jersey Devils seem to be a team right now that I'm definitely keeping an eye on as a team that's struggling. We spoke about the Oilers last week. Calgary was another team that the Islanders saw. But anything on the NHL front you'd like to share for a minute or two?
Yeah, I'll quickly talk with the NHL. We know American Thanksgiving. They say this is the time if you're in a playoff spot, most likely.
I don't think you can say that anymore. I think
last year, Tom, only two teams outside the playoffs made it in. In the East, it was the Florida Panthers taking it from the Detroit Red Wings, and Minnesota Wild took a spot from the Calgary Flames. So
right, because Calgary collapsed, Minnesota got hot. Yep, and yeah, it makes sense because Detroit was in a playoff spot. They played very well the first couple months. Good point.
Exactly, but it's so hard to know what happened. Depends on your schedule. If you look at a team like the New Jersey Devils, they've had some goaltending inconsistency. The injuries to Jack Hughes, I still don't even think Nico Hischier has returned the lineup. So you're missing some few players, and who knows if Jack Hughes is playing at 100%. Same with Connor McDavid earlier. The team I'm really interested in the Metro are the Penguins. They brought in Erik Karlsson to really help this team, and they got Carl Dubas as GM, and this team's a game below 500, and the Metro is really heating up there. Where the Washington Capitals are a big surprise in second. Rangers are really
Rangers
hot.
obviously had the big winning streak, and that's going to coast them into, at the top three easily based off that big. They had a 10-game winning streak. So at this point, they play 500 the rest of the year. They're in the top three.
Exactly. And then you look at the Atlantic, the Boston Bruins still a big surprise. The Detroit Red Wings look like this year they may have figured it out. But the team I'm really interested with Tampa Bay. Vasilevsky close to returning. What is he going to look like? And Central Division, the two teams I'm few teams I'm keeping my eye on. The Minnesota Wild, they are reeling and fast.
I think they're 5-8-4, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and they're losing 2-1 to Colorado right now. And with the Winnipeg Jets are playing good. The Arizona Coyotes are playing good. I think they're in a playoff spot or just barely outside.
I'm skeptical on Arizona. Detroit, I agree with you, can be there. I don't know about Arizona long term. I just don't know. I mean, theoretically, yes, they could compete because again, I think to me this year it's more about NHL Christmas is where you are in a place because again, you only played not even a quarter of the season so far, just about. So I
Exactly.
think they'll definitely be as we get into next month. That's where to me it's like, but yes, you're right. Historically, it's always Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving. If you're in a playoff spot, you make the playoffs. But this year in the East, even in the West, I'm not quite sure. Let me get
Exactly.
yeah,
All right,
good.
Tom, just finishing up on I'll quickly touch on the Pacific. And the Pacific, those teams are sitting pretty right now. If you're
Vegas,
the
the
Golden
Kings,
Knights,
yep, and
Vancouver, LA
and the
Kings,
Vancouver Canucks.
you're sitting pretty where teams like the Ducks and Seattle, they're 6 points behind you. You have some breathing room. So, and if you're the Edmonton Oilers, you are running out of time. You're 8 points out of a playoff spot. They had a big win today against Washington, but if they don't figure out things, I think by early to mid December, it's a lost season for them.
I don't know. You know what? To be 6-12-1, I mean, there has been stories where you can come back. Ottawa a few years back had a miracle run
You had
and got
St.
in
Louis, but
Montreal one year. I mean, yeah. I mean,
but I this team, their problem is the goaltending and the defense, and the the thing that I think was intriguing is they brought majority of the same roster they had last year back. I think maybe a minus two forwards,
well, I mean,
and
what were the last 2 years? What they go to a conference final in a
yep,
second round. So you're looking at
the
okay,
Stanley Cup champions.
yeah, I mean, so you look at it, your core should be, you're thinking, all right, in the Western Conference, I can come back. I've got the best player in the world, and I've got the second best player probably in the world, at least because I play with the best player in the world. I should be back, but they can never seem to get it right there in Edmonton. It's kind of a shame there. We'll certainly have to see, but there's definitely a lot of pressure there. Calgary, we spoke about, but conversely, Vancouver has got off to a great start, and Vancouver very well could be, let's say, this year's Seattle. Seattle got off to a great start last year and rode the wave. But before I move on to closing thoughts, we'll bring the rest of the guys on here. Ron wants to say it would be a big plot twist if Brock comes out of Randy. Yeah, that's wishful thinking. I
Brock
don't.
ain't doing no war games. I can
I
tell
was
you
going to
that
say the
much.
same thing. I love you, Ron, but I think Brock's deal, if we see Brock, it's probably Rumble. I'm
Yeah.
guessing if Brock comes back, it's Rumble, Chamber, Mania deal, and maybe Gunther, because Gunther talked about him on the Chris Van Valet show. So that would be where I would go with that. TBK says, yep, we'll definitely keep you on soon. I definitely promise you we'll do a post show. We'll definitely do something. We always do something for the Rumble every year. We always do something for Elimination Chamber. So we'll get you back. Hope you're well. Thank you for your hard work. I want to give you the floor because I want to bring the rest of the guys on here in a second. So anything else you want to plug, share, or say? And I'm looking forward to recapping the show with you Friday night as usual. And fire away, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Always a pleasure. Just to end things on a wrestling note, the big question I think tomorrow is could we see a potential cash in for Damian Priest or a failed cash in? We know the carnage of War Games.
And you got
Could this
Drew in there. Yep, good point.
be the opportunity on the hockey fan chat? We are just finishing up editing an episode. We'll have it ready in a few days talking about the Vancouver Canucks. You talk about what a great season they have had. And listen, we're getting close to Rumble season. We're about almost 2 months away, and then we're at
I think
Mania
just
season.
about. I think it's 9 weeks from tomorrow. About 9 weeks.
Exactly. Roman Reigns, hopefully we'll see him on television soon. Most likely we're not going to see John Cena, unfortunately. But
Well, the writer's strike's over. He has to go back to work.
And we can end it here on this. Rock and Roman will not. It's not happening. I don't. It's dead in the water. It will not happen.
No, I think it's never going to happen. Unfortunately, it's going to be one of those what ifs, kind of like the Undertaker and Sting. It's never going to happen, unfortunately. But Cena, I do think maybe we'll have him back at Mania season. We'll certainly see again. Fast forwarding, last thing, it'll be so curious because WrestleMania will be in Philadelphia this year. Who actually gets into the Hall of Fame? We'll have to talk about that in a couple of months because I think Philadelphia automatically ECW comes to mind, but. Heyman, but anybody else would be really fascinating. But that'll be for another time. We can follow you on Instagram and Twitter at Randy Dillon. I look forward to speaking with you, my friend, next week. And enjoy. And we'll look forward to a recap and everything else with you. And thank you for all you do, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Have a happy Thanksgiving weekend.
Yes, and that was Mr. Randy Dillon, host of the Hockey Fan Chat. And we are joined here probably fresh off the basketball court, probably getting ready for level up training, the brute force Bradley Weiss and Mr. Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show. And Fellas, happy Friday. Hope your Thanksgiving was good. Hope the tryptophan didn't hit you too hard. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about the New York Jets. Because I'm not going to run through every pick because I think that there should be some time, unfortunately or fortunately, spent on these New York Jets. And speaking of that, I'm joined here by the man that is the host of the Liftoff Jets. We heard him earlier in the afternoon today, the first of two shows here. One, you and Sharman Phillip with the Liftoff Jets was more, I think, analytical. And then we had a guy, Michael Palace of the Jet Up Leading podcast, who kind of comes up with some interesting ideas. Interesting fellow, a little out there, but he's got his opinion. God bless him on that, but we'll certainly get into that. But fellas, as I said, hope your Thanksgiving was well. And how you doing tonight?
Good.
Well, we'll definitely talk about the Jets. I want to spend some time on that, but obviously the brute force battle ice. I do want to talk about obviously our picks for our league here because it's getting rather interesting because I'm looking at the standings here, and it's kind of pretty much a three-team race, but a number of different people, including yourself, are kind of almost needing a big week or two and maybe to win out. So the brute force battle ice, I know you got that screen up. If you don't, I'll read it off for you.
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to put any screen up right now because it was the worst week in my picking history.
I saw, I was watching it, and I wasn't worried about myself. I was looking at the brute force Brad Weiss, and I'm like, he's got 2 wins. And what did you wind up winning? I think two.
I won two games, and lost.
You might as well just not picked last week. That would have been the same thing.
I basically shouldn't have picked the week. I mean, it was that bad. I mean, the fact that I went from like 5 games over to now being 5 games under is a major drop off. And just, of course, I had to hear from the man, the myth, the legend, John Gonzalez, who made sure to let me know that he knows that he's right on my tail all of a sudden, and now it's getting scary. But in the end, listen, I gotta eat crow. I sucked last week. Let's just keep it simple. I sucked. Okay, and I have to pick it up, and obviously easy pick today, and I got a nice Cowboys easy pick.
Although I was watching the picks, and Billy McInerney picked the Jets, and I was like, you picked the Jets, and like you're actually like right in the race. I don't know why he picked the Jets. Did he not?
I don't know, but listen, 2 easy picks. Obviously, our Detroit Lions let us down. Tom Bryce, very disappointed in them and their performance. And listen, I'll say this kind of conclude this. Okay. Obviously, some man named Tom Bryce is in the lead right now. And
who?
You got Rob Maraska.
Well, Rob Maraska, the card man, who I still feel like, picks these games and just, like Anthony Finkel was the napkin guy and Rob Maraska's the card man. I mean, the card man held first place, and he still might be in first. I mean,
I'm throwing no shade on Rob Maraska because now after last week, I have a very, very tough time catching up to him. So
yeah, 15, if we were going in baseball terms, 15 games back is almost like impossible. You're at that point where it's almost impossible. I mean, unless you went out this week, maybe you'll win out. Billy McInerney a couple weeks ago had that.
Hey, let's be honest. There's a 3-way tie right now between me, Brad, and Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
So now it's going to be between the 3 of us. Forget about getting first. I don't think we're catching first.
No.
We just got to make sure Mr. Gonzalez does not finish above
Exactly.
us.
Yes. Exactly.
We got to do that.
We got to get to 500 and leave John under. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of time left. I mean, hopefully you guys will wind up going on a big run, and maybe you will make some ground up the brute force. So hopefully for your sake here, you'll wind up actually making up some ground. And I do want to get to a comment or two. And Ron here wants to gloat about the Packers. They kick some Lions. But yeah, the Lions, for whatever reason, on Thanksgiving, they get it right. I don't have the Lions ever won on Thanksgiving. I was like thinking about that. I'm sure they have, but it feels like they
have. But I saw something really dumb on some social media platform about something with the moon. Every time the moon is a certain way on Thanksgiving, the Lions have lost every year. So I don't know.
I feel like they've lost like every Thanksgiving. When did the Lions win on Thanksgiving? Like, when was their last win?
8 years ago.
How long?
8 years ago. Then they've now lost 7 in a row.
That's it. There you go. You hit the nail on the head. That was exactly what I was thinking. It had to have been. And that was when they made the playoffs. I think they won. I mean, it's been a while ago. I think
16,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they're just almost like, I don't get it. I mean, I just don't get why the Lions can't wake up early. They have turkey before the game. I mean, they pretty much play like turkeys. I mean, sure, it was 29-22, but it really wasn't that close. And Campbell made some really questionable decisions. I mean, he's a real gambler. I mean, you want to talk about coaches who gamble. We always talk about the Chargers coach all the time, but Dan Campbell, love the guy, but he's a gambler, Brad. He's a real gambler.
Yeah, well, definitely that decision to fake that punt on 4th down.
That was horrific.
That was a very, very bad decision.
That was the game.
Yeah, but that definitely was. But with that being said, listen, you know what? The Lions are 8-3. He's taken gambles before. They worked. This didn't work.
Got a tough schedule though coming up. They were talking about the schedule.
They do, and to be honest with you, as a Detroit Lions supporter here on this show,
obviously,
I do have to be honest and say the last 2 weeks haven't been very encouraging.
Actually, the last few weeks. Listen, the Bears game. Listen, they struggled to win that game. The Chargers game, they won on the road last minute. I mean, I still got the game ingrained in my head against Baltimore. I mean, they really haven't been that impressive the last month. If you think about who the teams that have been competitive, Lions really, I don't know if the wheels are coming off. It's too early to say that, but they're certainly struggling a little bit.
Two things have been bothering me about Detroit, especially yesterday, was number one, Goff is not playing good whatsoever.
No. Yeah, he had a streak for a while. He didn't turn the ball over, but lately he's been turning the ball over a little bit.
And number two, their defense is not playing well. They had that one really good game a couple of weeks ago, but other than that, that defense is not going to be good enough. And think about it; they're not going to be able to beat anybody in the NFC playoffs. They're not going to be able to beat Philly or San Fran.
Even I would say Dallas. Dallas is playing well right now. Got to give them credit.
Exactly.
That to me is the more important thing. I mean, the fact that they're struggling is bad, but that's why we're talking about it. What Chris just said. It's not. We know they're going to make the playoffs, so we're not worried about them making the playoffs. I still think they'll make the playoffs.
Oh, I think if they lose out, they probably make it in this.
I don't think they're going to lose out. I don't think they're going to lose out. I mean, that would be crazy to go from really bad at like 1-7 last year to coming back, and then this year going really hot at the beginning and then struggling at the end and falling apart.
Hey, we've seen it. Listen, Miami did it, right? Miami 3 years ago.
That's true. I don't see Detroit missing the playoffs, but to the point of Chris, if they play like this, they ain't beating any of those teams. And I would be afraid to see them go against Minnesota in the playoffs right now. I mean, they're not really playing well.
That's a great point. Anything you guys want to add on that? I figured we just recap. We'll do a few picks. But
like Chris said, especially their defense. I think Detroit's just. I don't know. It almost seems like they're kind of going through the motions right now. Like we talked about, they played.
Good point.
They played a poor game. Let's
it was not 29-22. That game was like.
I'm not even talking about that. To me, they played a poor game against Chicago. They were lucky to have a fourth.
They were very lucky. They were lucky
to have a fourth quarter against a bad team, and they were able to move the ball late.
The Charger game, they slept through that game on the road. Chargers aren't any good. They should
have been much worse too. I think Green Bay missed out on a few opportunities to put more points on the board.
Yeah, for sure. They missed out on opportunities, but also too, Jordan Love played a hell of a game. But I mean, listen, Detroit, their defense is struggling. The quarterback has 6 turnovers in his last 2 games, and that's just not going to win. That's not going to win ball games. And all of a sudden, the NFC North is not a lock. The playoffs, I probably would be safe to say the Lions are going to end up making the postseason. But the NFC North, all of a sudden, is not a lock.
And Minnesota and Detroit playing each other 2 more times, by the way. There's 2 more matchups between those 2 teams.
Exactly. And while we don't know that if Justin Jefferson will finally make his return on Monday night, what I do know is they play in weeks, I believe, 16 and 18.
Yeah.
2 of the last 3 games are Lions-Vikings.
Right. Yep.
And
I would have fully expected by then JJ to be back.
Those 2 is the Dallas game.
Yeah. The sandwich. The last 3 games of the year are Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings.
That's not easy.
You could make every argument they finished by going 0-3.
And that's why I felt like you had to win yesterday, because I'm not saying that you're going to lose out, but the fact is that that's a game. Green Bay, I know our buddy Ron's here, and he's thumping the Packers bandwagon here. But Detroit, if you're supposed to be this elite team that wants to be in the discussion of being at the top 2 or 3 in the NFC, you got to win that game tomorrow against Jordan Love.
They've laid a couple eggs at some bad times,
Absolutely.
And as great as Baltimore's been, I mean, to come out play that pathetic in that game.
Yeah, it's a national audience.
Even the first loss, week 2 to the Seahawks.
Yeah, you're in a national audience. You got all of America watching, and you're 8-2. It's supposed to be your coming out party. Even though, yes, you've been on primetime a couple times. You got some big wins under your belt, the Kansas City game for sure. Even the Monday night game against Vegas. But that's a game you got to beat Green Bay. If you're going to tell me, you're going to be an elite team in the NFC, you got to win that game. You can't play the way you did against Green Bay.
The one final thing I'll say, the thing that'll worry me the most is not just what Minnesota can bring on offense with Jefferson and Addison, and Hawkinson and Madison and Ty Chandler. It's what they could do on defense. Brian Flores has done a complete 180 with this Viking defense, and that's what's going to carry Josh Dobbs. And I think the Vikings are going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I think that looking at the NFC right now, I think that the Vikings should make the playoffs, because if you look at it right now, I mean, I think Seattle's in the second wild card, and Seattle, I don't think anybody thinks much of after yesterday. Then you've got basically a cluster of teams. I mean, okay, Ron's Packers are alive. I don't know how many people are really sold on them. We think one team in the South will get it. I don't think much of Brad's Falcons and the Buccaneers. And you got the Rams at 4-6. So realistically speaking, I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to make the playoffs. And real quick on the Lions schedule here, New Orleans next week, not going to be an easy game in New Orleans, no matter what.
On the road, it's not going to be easy.
You got the Bears on the road. Okay, fine, but you struggled against the Bears last week. You've got Denver, which has kind of been the cardiac kids this year. They've been regurgitated, and they're 5-5, and they're alive, and they've got a great defense. They've played a lot better.
There's a lot to play for.
Yeah, a lot to play for. And listen, we've seen it with Miami a couple of years ago, got off the mat and finished 9-8. So Denver's much improved. As you pointed out correctly, you got Minnesota on the road. You're going into Dallas, which is going to always be a tough environment. That's an 8:15. I think that's a Saturday night game. And then you've got the Vikings to end the season. So, I mean, these games are going to be no gimmies for the Lions. So the Lions definitely have to figure it out here. But, obviously I'm going to certainly pick some games. But we got to talk about the New York Jets, because I don't want to talk about that.
We don't have to. We really don't have to. No.
I do, because you know what? I was listening, and I don't mean to pick on him, because obviously I love Michael Palace, and I want to stress this out here. But, he opened up his post show talking about the fact that the New York Jets, I don't know if anybody heard it or not. We'll probably replay it on Sportswire once he gives me the audio. But he talked about the situation with the New York Jets, and he basically said that Jim Harbaugh is making $7 million a year in Michigan, and that he's got a chance to win the national championship. He said with an asterisk, this all depends if Michigan wins tomorrow, wins a national championship. But he said basically, you have to open up the truck, open up the vault in the bank, and he wants Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is the only solution to turn the New York Jets around. He says you start off with $12 million as a base salary, and with incentives, make it go up to $16 million and let him get control of this team. And that's the only way the Jets can turn around. Now, I have obviously heard what you and Sharman had to say. I've seen what different people have said in the Sportswire group. I got to talk about it here. This New York Jets situation, I mean, I don't know if my lifetime I've seen as bad quarterbacking. And last year was bad quarterbacking. Let's obviously remember that last year was bad quarterbacking. And frankly, in 2021, we were on the air. The Jets had bad quarterbacking that year too, although maybe not as bad statistically. But this New York Jets team, I mean, they're going backwards. I mean, I know quarterback play has been bad this year, but I mean, where does this New York Jets franchise go from here, gentlemen?
They're gonna cross their fingers and hope that Aaron Rodgers returns next year. Forget about this year.
Right, he's not coming back this year.
Yeah.
This season's over.
They got to cross their fingers and pray that he comes back next year. Not just comes back, but also plays at an extremely high level. Now, you're asking a lot from a guy who's going to be 40 years old starting the season off now.
Correct.
And coming off, the Achilles surgery or whatever he had. Obviously, it's surgery. So that's one thing. Now, another thing, they got to rebuild their offensive line. they got to add wide receivers to that group because outside of Garrett Wilson, there's garbage there.
Well, Mr. Palace said we should see what we could entertain for giving up Mr. Wilson, which made no sense to me.
Yeah,
because I'm looking
we have
at
nothing. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, yeah. Give up your one wide receiver weapon. Yeah, it's great. You're probably going to get a couple of nice picks for him, but then you got to hit on those picks. So,
right?
No, I don't agree with that at all. You got a young wide receiver, keep him, build around him. So. And you got to also cross your fingers that the defense could be an elite defense for a third year in a row. And we're probably going to lose Bryce Huff. I know Will McDonald's going to kind of slide into his role, and I don't think we're going to miss that much anyway. But, you got guys like C.J. Mosley going to be a year older. He's going to be over 30. He's already over 30. So now you're talking about guys getting older. So I don't know. And a bigger problem, too, is who do you want making up this roster? Who building this roster? Do you really want Joe Douglas continuing?
Well, I'm going to get to that next.
I don't know.
I think it's a very valid,
horrible season this year building that team. I mean, he every year he's been here, the offensive line has been a wreck. Whether it's injuries or not, it's always been a mess. Obviously, he missed on the quarterback with Zach Wilson. I don't care what anybody says. He's done. He's never going to quarterback again for us again. And we were talking about it in the group. Maybe we may not even see him again ever.
You know what? I think Billy McInerney said that, and our buddy Billy McInerney, I think he's spot on. I don't know if this guy can be on an NFL roster and legitimately be a backup quarterback. I mean, Sam Darnold looks like Tom Brady compared to him. I mean, I'm being dead serious. I mean, I just don't know where this team goes from here. And I understand, obviously, look, Rodgers was out and you mortgaged the farm for it. But, I know the defense statistically has dropped off the last couple weeks, but the fact is you really relied so much on this team. And I was speaking with one of our listeners off the air who listens to us and talks about the Jets with me, and he lives in my neighborhood. And I was like, listen, this Jet team hasn't scored, I think, more than 2 touchdowns an entire game this season. It doesn't matter at this point. They're scoring an average, I think, of 15 points a game at this point. It does not matter. I'll come back to just in a second. But, the brute force spread-wise, I'm curious because obviously you're a coach. You played the game. I've covered you as a player, and you've gone through these couple of changes. Now, the New York Jets, it's obviously a season that it's another here we go again season. It's going to be another season out of the playoffs, the 13th consecutive season without making the postseason. And I could understand Mr. Palace's frustrations in some way, as to many people. And I certainly send my condolences to my brother Sean Bryce, who was at the Jets game, probably should have been doing Black Friday shopping instead of being there at MetLife Stadium. But hey, you're at the game. You had a good time. More power to you. But, Brad, this is an interesting point because you went through a coaching change with Kevin Spann. Mike McSloy comes in there, and it doesn't happen your first year there, but after you leave, the program turns it around. But, Aaron Rodgers is the elephant in the room. And Joe Douglas, who Chris kind of talked about, obviously did not construct this team very well. We didn't have a backup quarterback. Offensively, we're challenged. The defense had to do it all on its own. And the Jets got lucky for a little while, 4-3, 3 straight wins. But eventually, you got to have a quarterback who can move the ball, and the Jets don't have that. You got a coach in Robert Saleh who's 15-30. 15-30 in 3 years. Now, that track record should say you should be out the door, especially in this town. And you've got a coach, an offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, who obviously should also be out the door. But because of Aaron Rodgers, this big elephant in the room, you've been through a coaching situation, Brad, where you played with some teams that unfortunately underperformed, kind of like this team. What do you see happening in this offseason with this Jets team? Because there has to be changes. And if you ask me, frankly, to be totally straight, as the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportzwire Radio, your voice of all wrestling, Robert Saleh should be shown the door. Nathaniel Hackett should be shown the door. Joe Douglas should be shown the door. And I think every quarterback on that roster should be shown the door. What do you say?
Tom, I'm normally the harsh guy and the rough one in the room. I'm normally the one that gets on here and has.
You're going to tell me that Saleh should be back,
and goes crazy.
But if you're going to tell me right now, hold on a second. If you're going to tell me right now, if Hackett should be back, Douglas should be back, and Saleh should be back, I mean, you got some real explaining to do if that's where you're going to go. So,
you got to let me talk.
All right, I'm letting you speak.
I'll explain. Okay, but with that being said, first of all, I was one of the lucky ones. As you said, Tom, I was on the court from 9 to 7 today. But I didn't watch the Jet game, so I didn't get to suffer. All right, my dad did let me know that he suffered, so I knew what happened inevitably. Yeah. But in the end, I'm going to say this, okay, and let's start with Robert Saleh, whose record you spoke about.
15 and 30.
Obviously, it's not great, but
No.
here's the thing, Tom Bryce. Robert Saleh, okay, is a defensive coach. Okay,
Correct.
He came in as a defensive mind, and his defense with Ulbrich has been elite throughout his time here. Offensively, okay, has done an okay job. The problem is that the guy who is the most important player on the field has been on the field, okay, and he's not the guy for the job. You're putting a guy who's playing the most important, in your sense, right? You're going in any job, and you have
You're playing point guard at St. Joe's. You're not a point guard.
Yeah, we just don't have one. And in the end, right, you can't win without one, and that is not really Saleh's fault. Saleh, basically, to me, has been handcuffed to play Zach Wilson. I mean, I know he doesn't want to. He won't say it. He won't come out and do it. As a coach, we all know what we want to say. Okay, you could tell by his reactions, by his expressions, that this is not really the guy he wants to put on the field, but he's feeling the pressure because of the fact that they want to validate their decision, okay, which, again, they took a year and a half.
We see Boyle today, and he really wasn't much better.
No,
I got to be honest.
Again, Chris has talked about it. Justin has talked about it, okay, and in the end, obviously, this falls a lot on Joe Douglas, okay, and the construction of the team. And Chris, you said a bad pick in Wilson. I'll add another guy who deserves to be on this list as a bad pick from Joe Douglas. That is Mekhi Becton. Okay,
good point.
Very, very bad. Okay, and I know his play necessarily hasn't been that bad, but I hate to give credit to friends who told me that, like, oh, don't worry. Like, I remember draft night when we got Becton, he's like, oh, this is going to be a bad pick. He's going to be hurt. He's never going to be on the field. Blah, blah. And guess what? He was exactly right. This guy just can't stay on the field. He's not consistent enough. We were supposed to rely on him as a guy who was going to be the kind of the cores of this offensive line. Okay, and he just hasn't been there. That seems to be another bad pick. Okay, but in the end, Joe Douglas, unfortunately can't go until you see Aaron Rodgers on the field, because he is the guy that got Rodgers. And Nathaniel Hackett, I'm going to give him a little bit, not a pass, but at the same time, he did not come here to use Zach Wilson at quarterback. He came here to coach Aaron Rodgers. So until we see
you figure it out. What are you giving him an excuse because the guy got hurt? You figure it out. And listen,
hold on.
More. You got two of the best. You got two really good running backs that you could run the ball.
Dalvin Cook, yep.
And here, let me just give you something here. All right, since week 5, okay, when the handcuff or the pitch count was taken off of Breece Hall, right? Week 5, he carries the ball 22 times against Denver for 177 yards, right? They win that game. Since that game, Breece Hall's carries 6, 12, 4, 10. And then today, how many did he have? 7.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't many.
How is Breece Hall not a bigger part of this offense and the game plan? Listen, the quarterback, and it should be more so because the quarterbacks stink, whether it's Boyle or Wilson. They both stink. They both should not be even on a roster at this point, okay? So what do? Give Breece Hall the ball. Give him the ball, right? If you're a coach, if you have one scorer on your team, what are you going to do? Are you going to avoid giving him the ball?
You give him the ball 50 times.
A guy who doesn't score? No, you're going to give it to the guy who scores 30 points.
And Brad played with a guy like that. Frank Vasily.
I will go to this length, though, because I think Chris does make a good point, and he's right. But in the same time, if I go to a basketball term, Chris Pizzea, if you know as the other team that's the only threat on the court, okay, you're going to start double teaming and doing things to stop it. And other teams are obviously trying to find ways to stop that, which is making the plays be called differently. If I'm a coach, right, and I know that they're going to double team my guy every single time and they're not going to get him in good positions, I'm going to try to find other ways. Now, the issue is, Chris Pizzea, is that, to your point, there should be more ways to get Breece the ball, whether it's, throwing it to him on a short pass or something. Okay, you got to try to get him involved. The issue is that the person in the most important position can't make those throws. It's not worth trusting. Then on top of that, it's like, listen, I hate to give myself credit, Tom Bryce, but the one thing that I did on the court was provide rim protection. You need protection.
No, you listen. Listen, Brad, I'll always give you credit. When you were healthy, you did a lot of rim protecting.
So again, you need your role players. You need the guys to do their jobs. And the offensive line, it's like they're just basically, so people just walk through it and get to the quarterback and the running back. again, this is a lot of John Douglas. And again, the issue is that, Aaron Rodgers, you can't get rid of Hackett because you have to make Rodgers happy. If you get rid of Hackett, Rodgers is going to be pissed. Okay, it's all about Rodgers because he's the only thing.
Yes.
And he's the only thing, by the way, Chris, that's keeping players from wanting to leave. Garrett Wilson without Rodgers would want to go. Everybody would want to leave. Everybody would be pissed off. Yep. Okay, so in the end, he's the only saving grace, and you can't get rid of Hackett because he's the guy that he wanted to be here for. So that's why you have to. Salah's still the coach. He has to still be the coach because he's the guy that Hackett's with, unfortunately. And Douglas, you're going to have to keep him because, again, he's the one that brought Rodgers in. If it fails next year, he's got to go, and everyone has to go.
Yeah, I don't believe
everyone
that.
Has to go.
The GM should go after this year.
I agree with you, Chris, and I want to get Justin in a second. But
here's the thing. I just want to say one last thing real quick. I don't disagree with you, Chris. That's the hard thing is that I don't disagree that that's one of the right things to do. But at the same time, we all know in reality that that's not going to happen, and it can happen.
And Palace said, he preferenced, I'll give him this. He said, I know, though, when I'm saying this, that Salah's going to be back, Hackett's going to be back, and Douglas is probably going to be back. But, Justin, coming back to you, this team, Joe Douglas, at the very least, should not come back because you didn't bring in a backup quarterback. He's 39, 40 years old, Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
You constructed a team that relied so heavily on this. And I don't think it's because Woody Johnson's cheap. Woody Johnson's to tell the team. I don't think it's Woody Johnson's fault at all. I think it's Joe Douglas'
I don't think so.
fault. Yeah, I think that Mr. Palace, when he talks about Woody Johnson on his podcast, I think that's completely misguided because he brought in Aaron Rodgers. It's Joe Douglas who did not get a backup quarterback in this, which we know this year, right? Think about it. We've been on the show this year, and how many quarterbacks have been hurt this year? You got to bring in a backup quarterback, Justin.
No doubt. And that was the biggest failure of the season, right? You had the immediate opportunity on September 12th to bring somebody into the practice squad.
You didn't do it.
And say, look, we lost our quarterback for the season. I would like to personally, I don't understand why you would never carry 3 quarterbacks on your roster. For 2-3 weeks before Semien went to the practice squad, the Jets had 2 quarterbacks on their roster. It was Wilson and Boyle, and that was the biggest mistake from the start. If they were that gung-ho on justifying Zach Wilson and keeping him as the number 2, whatever. I was honestly 50-50 about that decision in the offseason. It was like, whatever, he's going to redshirt, Rodgers is going to play. But then obviously that doesn't happen. All right, and the real issue here is between what Douglas has done or not done.
Yeah, there you go.
He's tried. It's a combination of what Douglas has done and the bad luck of all these injuries. You couldn't have also predicted every single offensive lineman get hurt. You also can't predict that they're bringing guys in left and right off the streets. This Xavier Newman has played a couple of games. They drafted Carter Warren. He made his first start at left tackle. You couldn't have predicted all these injuries, but maybe it's his fault for getting some injury-prone guys. But then again, he drafts a guy like Elijah Vera Tucker, who has a pristine history at USC, not missing games, 2 season-ending injuries in Denver, right? Sometimes it's the bad luck of the draw. The problem I look at is no matter what quarterback is running this offense, the thing with Nathaniel Hackett is the offense is just bland. It's unimaginative.
I never seen a team. How many 3rd and longs do they have? Every game, it's the same thing. It's like 3rd and 15, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 8. It was to the point.
Also, too, and another part of coaching is this team's undisciplined. The false starts, the holdings, the penalties, left and right.
That's on coaching.
But the other thing is, and this game was a perfect example of coaching circles around another staff. What is the biggest part of Miami's offense? It's motion. It's getting Waddle in motion. It's getting Hill in motion. It's putting Mostert out wide and then motioning it back into the backfield and getting these players out in space. Where is that with Breece Hall? And listen, it's not so much the 7 carries, because if Breece Hall had 7 carries, but 6 catches for 60 yards because they utilized him that way, where's the slip screen?
But there was also a point that I think that going into the drive where they scored right before the touchdown, that long 16 play where he got picked off, the Jets only had 22 plays the first 40 minutes of the game. That's unexcusable.
Because they can't sustain anything on offense. All right, teams want to blitz the Jets because the Jets' offensive line can't protect.
Right.
You know what? Call a slip screen because the running back gets out in space. Guess what? Now he's got 15 yards of open room because it's one-on-one. It's one-on-one downfield, and now those receivers could start blocking. So I mean, listen, there's so many different ways an offensive coordinator could game plan against certain defense. This Miami defense is nothing special.
No,
listen, they're an okay defense, but like there's so many ways that you could utilize guys open
but
in
they're
space.
so bad on third
bubble screen.
down. I mean, to the point that Al Michaels, who forgets half where he is at this point, was actually saying, which was, I knew you chuckled at that, Justin, is the fact that, and we'll obviously, when we do our stream on Sportswire in the coming weeks, I'm sure we'll do better, but maybe not. We'll see. At least people will make fun. That's the good news. But the point is that, the Jets were better on fourth down today than third down.
It was the same story, but it was the same story last week against Buffalo too.
Yeah.
And you know what? There just needs to be more creative plays for this offense, and I just don't see it from Nate Hackett. I don't. No. I mean, the offensive line can't block. So where's the bubble screen to Garrett Wilson on first down? Instead of the standard run up the middle. Oh wait, we can't block. Hall loses 2. Every play.
Figure out the running game. They have to, man. You got two guys. You got 2 really good running backs that could.
But they don't have. But the problem is they don't have an offensive line that could properly run block.
I get that, but figure it out. That's the thing.
I'm with you 7 times.
I'm sorry.
If you know that your quarterback is limited, you still can run the ball more than 7 times.
And here's another conceptual problem with the coaching staff.
Jump in.
Where are the RPOs? Mm-hmm. Where are the trap plays? Where's the pulling guard? Where's the pulling fullback? I mean, they have Nick Bawden on the roster for a reason, right? Not many teams employ a fullback on their roster.
Yeah.
So make use of the fullback, run an offset eye, use it and run a trap play. And that usually clears out the middle of the line, and Breece Hall would go for 10.
Eventually, you're going to wear down the defense.
Yep.
I think the problem is in this league that you could in your sleep almost picture the Jets' offense. I mean, I could go and close my eyes and know every play they're going to run. It's the same thing.
Yes, and listen, multiple teams. Including teams like San Francisco, the Rams, they run iterations of the West Coast offense. Yes. But they also run iterations of like the college game, right? Where RPOs have been just integrated into the NFL and have been so popular. That doesn't mean the quarterback has to be Speedy Gonzalez. What it means is it's got to give the threat. Okay, I got to look at the defense, right? Where are they loading? If they're loading up to the right side of the offensive line, we're going to run an RPO, and we're going to have a bubble screen to the left. There's nobody on that side. It's one-on-one coverage.
I'm going to get to a few picks. I don't want to go through all the games. I want to pick a few. But, I just real quick want to say one more thing on Zach Wilson. And Brad, you're welcome to jump in on this. I mean, the New York Jets, I don't know why this franchise can never get it right with a quarterback. I know Rodgers, okay, we're going to give this one more year and we're going to pray that it works. He's on the field. He comes back with vengeance. But this is a franchise that quarterback after quarterback that comes here with a few exceptions. Pennington was okay for a couple of years. Vinny Testaverde had 1 or 2 years. Maybe Ken O'Brien. I wasn't around for Ken O'Brien. But the point is the New York Jets have to be the only franchise in this league that I could think of, maybe with the exception of the Cleveland Browns, at least in my lifetime, that have never had a franchise quarterback. And I can't for the love of me understand it. Brad, I see you shaking your head. I know I'm onto something.
No, you are. And it's unfortunate because it's almost like it's not even only just the fact that they can't get the quarterbacks right, but they can't get the timing right. No. Like for example, like when Sam Darnold was here, I mean, obviously they just didn't have the talent on the field for him to really, flourish. If you have Sam Darnold in a system like the one we have right now, okay, with the players on the field, not the system, the players, I should say, the players that you have with a good system, okay, you can be successful. It's just so disappointing, and again, Zach Wilson is in his own stratosphere, Tom Bryce, and I really hate to validate.
He's going to be, what was the quarterback? Was it Jamarcus Russell? He's going into Jamarcus Russell, Joey Harrington, Ryan.
When your biggest comparison is Jamarcus Russell, that's
that was my
general manager firing immediately.
This is a special case, Tom Bryce. I mean, I know we've had some bad quarterbacks, but I think this one is going to go down as one of the worst quarterbacks in the whole history of the NFL.
I just named the
worst, and there he is. So, and listen, and you know what? I got to give credit to Billy McInerney, who came on here and straight up said that he's the worst thing he's ever seen. He's got, and it's true, because he really is, and it's just sad to see, because we talk about the defensive side of the football for the Jets and how elite they are and how well they're run and everything like that. It's just sad to see that. All you need is some competency. You don't need anything amazing. You just need somebody, and that's what makes it so sickening that they just don't have anybody who's a quality backup. I mean, if you have anyone who's just decent, I mean, below decent, a little okay, all right, you're actually a competitive team, okay? But Zach Wilson was that poor and that horrible at the sport that he played, at the position that he played, that he set this team at such a bad standard. Okay, because of his play, and it's just sad.
To be honest, he wasn't great for us by any stretch. But if we had a Mark Sanchez type, this team would have been better.
100%. Are you kidding me? I mean,
here's the thing about the first couple years with Mark Sanchez, and obviously what we see with Zach Wilson. They drafted a quarterback who could schematically fit in the offense designed for the Jets. It was a ground and pound offense. He was not asked to do much, and they drafted a quarterback in Zach Wilson. They drafted a quarterback in Zach Wilson, who lives and dies off the off-schedule plays, running around the pocket. That's not even going back to what the Michael LaFleur offense was coming from San Francisco. That's not what that offense is built to do. They hired these coaches in January, right? You always hire in late December, early January.
Correct.
And they had 4 months to look at the NFL draft and decide that if they want to draft a new quarterback or not, or keep Sam Darnold and figure out maybe we could actually not fail him like the whole situation of the first 3 years were. Because I do fully believe that the Jets failed Sam Darnold. I think he could have been a hell of a lot better than what we saw, because we saw flashes. We never saw flashes as Zach Wilson because they schematically drafted the wrong quarterback. He's not a 3-step drop.
But this franchise, we're going
that's all the West Coast offense was.
We're going on, and we will move on in a second as we're here on Sportswire Radio with Chris Pizzea, the host of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, and of course the brute force Bradley Weiss, the legendary SJLI Golden Eagles men's basketball player, 27th all-time in school history and rebounds. On a better note, we'll talk about the guys at the end of the show. Guys got a nice victory out in Midtown Manhattan against the John Jay College Bloodhounds. We'll get to that later on. But, 50 years, right? The New York Jets for 50 years have not been able to get it right for quarterbacks. A franchise quarterback. Okay, Mark Sanchez had a couple years because it was the right moment. The veteran team, I agree. Fitzmagic for the 1 year. Testaverde might have had, 2 years, whatever it was. Ken O'Brien, you probably saw. Ken O'Brien had a few good years. Pennington certainly maybe could have been that guy. He had some moments. Right. Brett Favre was basically Rodgers before Rodgers. But the point is, it's 50 years, and this franchise can't get it right and can't have a franchise quarterback. I mean, that's completely unacceptable. Other than the Cleveland Browns, maybe, I don't know of a franchise that has not been able to get it right for this long.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing. It is totally
absolutely embarrassing.
I don't get it. And, I just want to go back to what you guys said. Woody Johnson is definitely responsible for the team not getting a quarterback after Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Because the reports that came out, believe them or not, whatever, the reports that came out were that he told Joe Douglas and the team, we're not spending any more money. We're going with what we got here. So that's the reason why they didn't get any quarterback. Simeon is basically off the scrap heap. Probably cost nothing, the league minimum. But I mean, the other guys aren't costing that much either. I still don't know why they didn't get
Joshua Dobbs was out there, right?
At the trade deadline.
Carson Wentz. I mean, not saying that I would want Carson Wentz, but
I don't know if Wentz would be a good match here because he was not good in Philly at the end.
Right, but at least do something.
Right. Dobbs or Brissett would have been a good option too. I mean,
so Chris, I just want to ask the point blank question: are you putting this more on Woody Johnson than Joe Douglas? Because you're saying Joe Douglas didn't have the power to make these decisions.
I'm putting the the off season on Joe Douglas. But once the season started and once Aaron Rodgers went down, that's when Woody came down and said, no, we're not spending any more money. So from that point on, I'm going to blame Woody for that.
And listen, I know he's nothing special, but nobody thought to give Colt McCoy a call.
Just something. I like
anything, please.
Anything would have been better than what we got. Anything.
Yep.
Joe Flacco.
I thought about that. I was, you made me think about that too because didn't he sign somewhere 2 weeks ago or something like that?
Browns.
Yeah, I mean,
like you guys said, to kind of end the story right here is that not only have we possibly seen the last days of Zach Wilson in the NFL, we probably have seen the last day of him in the CFL, the XFL, any FL for the most part. I think his football career might be over. Because he is simply that bad at the sport. And it's just crazy to think that, again, like you guys said, they took him with the number 2 pick. Everybody's talking about, he throws like Mahomes sidearm. He does all these great things. And he becomes the worst quarterback in the NFL.
I got news for the quarterbacks. Listen, and I know I love the Steelers, but Kenny Pickett might be next. I mean, because I watched him last week. He's lucky that he's got Mike Tomlin as his coach, but even that magic may run out. But the point is that, these quarterbacks and Zach Wilson, I don't know if I would want him on any pro roster at this point. And let me get to Mr. TBK because he's tuned in here. We'll move on. He said here, Mr. TBK, who's not with us here, but he can comment. Said it before, I'll say it again. Should have read the letter. Dude begged you all to let him in, and you did just say anything. I forget who are you referring to again?
Rodgers?
Begged Jones to let him in, and you did. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
I think he spoke about maybe somebody else as a quarterback. I mean, if you want to clarify the comment, I appreciate you. But
one thing I got to say too, I had Mike Westfall, me and Sean and I
had him on twice. Yes,
right. We had him on the Liftoff show, and
yes, you had him on 2 times.
We asked him about, hey, did you ever meet Zach Wilson? Because I heard him say this in another interview, and I wanted him to say it on our show too. So I said, did you ever meet Zach Wilson? He goes, yeah, I met him during camp, and I tried talking to him, and he says, he said I was trying to talk to him, and I could have been talking Chinese, like he wasn't even paying attention to me, because he goes, because he was telling him, listen, I worked with Dan Marino, I worked with Drew Brees, I could help you, I could tell you what these guys did, and he wanted to know
hear it,
right? And then he told me, and then he told us on the episode, that he said the first day I went to work for the Saints. The first night, Drew Brees came knocking on the door, introduced himself, and he sat down with a notebook, and he was asking me questions about Dan Marino, how he prepared.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. Yes, I remember Coach said that. Yep.
Totally different, so Zach Wilson
and Mike Westfall was a 50-year NFL football man. I mean,
he's been around. He's been
around. If he would have told me, I would have said, Coach, how far, how when, and I'd be ready to go.
How did Dan Marino get it done? How did Drew Brees get it done? Like, how did these guys do it? I need to know. So, to me, that shows that Zach Wilson maybe. Listen, I'm not saying that tells you that he doesn't want to work hard at this or doesn't want to do whatever, but I don't know. Maybe the kid, he comes from money, right? He comes from a rich family. It's like, I don't need this. No
you know
big
what?
deal.
He's had, some issues, and we see this all the time. Johnny Manziel was another one, and these quarterbacks come in, and TBK is talking about Kaepernick, so he's being facetious.
Come
yeah.
on, the guy hasn't
TBK,
played in like 5
listen,
years.
Listen, TBK, we love TBK, but he's obviously let him focus on the Ravens.
I have nothing against the guy. This is nothing political, but the guy has not played in like 5 years.
Yeah, well,
If
you know what it is. Some
year,
people
like
to
next
do that.
year, I'm all for bringing him in.
One of our
5 years ago,
listeners does. Listen, I understand what TBK is saying. One of our listeners, my buddy Daniel Slavin, texts me the same thing that TBK does every so often about Colin Kaepernick. But the point is that, listen, Wilson is a bust. The Jets are going to have to move on. He can't be on the squad. He can't be in the league. He won't be in the league more than likely after next season. Maybe he's on as a third stringer. I don't think he will be. But we'll have to see what happens here. But, obviously, in the interest of time, let's talk about some games here. We have a number of different games. I'll go through some of the games. In the interest of time, I won't go through every single one of them. But, the brute force, Bradley Weiss, speaking of quarterbacks, I'll go with you first. That we kind of talked about like Zach Wilson. And it certainly pains me to talk about Kenny Pickett in the same category as Zach Wilson. But I have to say, Kenny Pickett's numbers, I was actually looking at them. And his numbers aren't far off from Zach Wilson's. Maybe the only difference is the Pittsburgh Steelers have a better defense than the New York Jets. And they obviously Mike Tomlin's Mike Tomlin. But, his string is definitely getting a little bit tighter around the neck. And obviously the news about the Steelers firing their offensive coordinator there, Matt Canada there, certainly Steelers fans certainly were furious with him for a number of weeks. Which brings me here to a matchup of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's a AFC North matchup, and obviously there's a lot on the line. I think for both teams, although I don't know for how much longer, but the Steelers here are 1-point favorites in Cincinnati. And I'm curious here because this is a very tough pick for you because you're obviously thinking about 500. You're 15 games back. You're hoping to win out here to make up for last. But then you've got a game here where it's literally almost like damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you got two offenses right now at this point that are probably going to put up combined, 200 passing yards total, maybe turn the ball over 3 times, 4 times. It'll probably be like every other Steelers game at this point, probably come down to the last 2 minutes of the game. Who has the ball? Can the Steelers make a stop? So with that all being said, the brute force Bradley Weiss, Steelers, Bengals, Steelers, 1-point favorites on the road, 1:00. Tell us who you got.
All right. Are we ready to go today, fellas? Oh, we got a malfunction on the upset alert. But listen, it's there. All right, it's there, and it's active, and it's ready to go, okay, for now. All right, and I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals in this game. First of all, I want to thank the Pittsburgh Steelers because after a rough beginning with them, they've actually been one of my most reliable teams to pick. I've gotten them right for the last 4 weeks, whether it's picking them, picking against them. They've been great, so I'm a very happy person to pick the Steelers these days because they're making me look good. They made me look good last
year. Now the rest of your picks, though, haven't been good, though.
I know, but they made me look good, with the Browns game. I mean, I will say they've been good lately. So I'm going to feel confident in my ability to pick this game. I'm going to take Cincinnati, even though they got Jake Browning at quarterback. I know that that's definitely not exciting. But at the same time, you just said it, Tom Bryce. There's nothing to be excited about with Kenny Pickett either. And there's nothing to be excited about with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, who, dare I say, is as anemic as the Jets. All right, and maybe not as bad, but they're there. I mean, they've been very bad.
Close. I watch Steelers games, and they're always
bad. So it's close. I'm going to say that, this is going to be a battle of bad offense yet again, kind of similar to that Cleveland game against the Steelers. And
the Packers game was like that. It was, the Steelers against the Ravens was like that. That's kind of Steelers football.
But I think the Steelers-Browns game recently was a really telling sign of where the Steelers are at right now. And I know people want to talk about, Canada's gone, everything's going to change. I get that Matt Canada wasn't the best offensive coordinator, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to revolutionize this offense that he's gone. So I'm going to say that Cincinnati wins. It's going to be a very close game. I could see it being just like the Cleveland game where it comes down to a late field goal at the end of the game. They win at home. Okay, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who Tom Bryce was getting hoop and hollering about when they were 6-3, are slowly falling back down to 500. So I think
they're
that
6-4 though, but they're 6-4.
Yeah,
Not
I did
6-5.
say slowly. I said slowly. With another loss,
One game.
they're going back down, and they might find themselves back where they're supposed to be around 500.
We'll find out. We'll certainly find out. Chris, again, it's another AFC North matchup. I would slightly agree with Brad in that probably the loser of this game probably has, considering this cluster in the AFC, and especially in the AFC North, has difficult odds of having any postseason aspirations. But alas, here we are. Steelers 1-point favorites on the road. Steelers, again, Brad pretty much said everything I couldn't say anything better on. And again, Cincinnati certainly will have excuses where they may end up. But it's, again, Cincinnati at home. The loser of this game is pretty much, I still think, on the outside looking in. But what do you think here? 1:00 matchup. Steelers, Bengals, Steelers, 1-point favorites.
Yeah, listen, if Cincinnati wins, they'll be tied with Pittsburgh with the same record. So
yeah,
they're still going to be, that last playoff spot probably in the AFC is going to be probably between those two guys. But listen, Browning looked okay last week. And that was without preparing to start. So now you give him a whole week to prepare to start. And I know Pittsburgh's defense is as good as anybody's right now. I kind of like Cincinnati here at home with the, Pittsburgh with the new offensive coordinator. Listen, and Pickett, I don't know how well he's going to do with a new offensive coordinator.
I don't know about Pickett. I be honest with you, Chris.
Yeah.
I watch enough of these games, and I wake up when the Steelers are on. I purposely put them on in the 1:00 hour to hopefully get Brad tortured by thinking about them. And Pickett, he's close to Wilson territory for me.
And basically, I'll take Browning with Cincinnati's weapons that he could throw to with Cincinnati, and they could run the ball with Mixon. So I'm going to take Cincinnati. Slight upset, right? It's only a 1 point underdog.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. It's a pick 'em. It's one of those.
Yeah.
If you had a choice, you would avoid it, but we don't.
Yeah, I'm
get
taking
that chance.
Cincy with the 1 point at home.
All right, fair enough here. And before I get to Justin, Anthony J. Finkel, who's alive here, usually never here.
Big Fink, what's going on?
Yeah, he's probably just waking up from tryptophan. He's probably turkeyed out, and he's probably somewhere else. He woke up now. He probably slept all day. Now, listen, a lot of people like that, but I actually did not that I did a lot of Black Friday shopping, but I had a Macy's $20 discount, so I used it, and I was out there. And he wants to say, "Boo, the Jets suck. Another disappointing season down the drain." Yeah, could not have said it any better. We spoke a lot about that. Maybe we'll come back to that in a little bit. But, Justin, the Steelers and the Bengals, I really think Kenny Pickett is starting to look like Zach Wilson to me. I look at him, and he can't move the ball. Okay, maybe he has a better running back, an occasional better weapon. He might be a little bit more mobile, I suppose. He doesn't turn the ball over as much, but he really is anemic in terms of moving the ball. Maybe the Steelers have a better defense slightly and a better coach, but, I don't know right now. But they are playing the Bengals. They are 1-point favorites on the road. The Bengals certainly have their own issues. I still think that, the winner of this game probably has a leg up. The loser is probably on the outside looking in. What do you think?
I think the coaching change was just what the doctor ordered. I do, and also too, if you guys haven't noticed, the emergence of Jaylen Warren, I think, adds another element to this Pittsburgh offense. Now, it is going to ultimately come down to, Kenny Pickett making plays, right? And that has been
doesn't make many.
that's been a big issue. But I think now that you have the two-headed monster of Harris and Warren, you've gotten Freiermuth back from IR. You got a little more to work with on offense, and just to me, I just don't see Jake Browning being able to move the ball much on this Pittsburgh defense. And I think that's ultimately what this comes down to. I like the Steelers in this game, but it's going to be one of those ugly slugfest, 16-10, 16-13 kind of deal.
That's been the Steelers the whole year outside of the 49er and the Jaguar game. Every Steeler game, it's like a repeat.
Yeah.
And how we complain about the Jets and how they're predictable. To me, I've watched enough Steelers football to tell me that it's almost the same thing. I can actually tell the Steelers in my sleep the plays they run.
Yeah, I mean, they're also better equipped to win. I just think
they've been better in the fourth quarter than the Jets. I agree with you on that.
Especially with Tomlin. And, we'll see what the new offense coordinators have in store. I mean, we'll see if they kind of change anything up on offense. Obviously, there's not going to be too much change because how much change can you really make in 1 week? But ultimately, I think the Steelers are going to be the better team in this game. And I just think you're going to see Browning turn the ball over 2 times. And I think that's going to really light the Steelers on fire, and they're going to win this game.
Well, as Jim Morrison famously once sang, "Light my fire," and I'll get to my thought in a second. But Anthony wants to say yes because on Wednesday nights I'm actually on a AM dial, 620 AM, 1640 and 93.5 FM. I'm on 9 o'clock Wednesday nights. But Anthony, actually, you want to check the new Sportswire Radio website because your photo's on there actually with yours truly because we have now a new photo gallery. And by the way, for some of the shows on Sportswire, if you have a photo of your podcast, like the Talking Rivals and the Liftoff Jets, if you give me your photo next time you send me the show, I'll actually put it on our website because I'm actually trying to upload the photo gallery. So definitely, Chris, if you can, if you have the shows next time, give me a photo and I'll post it on the website below. But, Justin, you hit the nail on the head as to why I'm actually going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's never any doubt. I always pick the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I always come with at least a good reason because I don't trust Jake Browning with the Steelers defense. At the end of the day, the Steelers in these sluggish, muddy type of low-scoring games, at the end of the day, if it was Joe Burrow, I would be a little nervous. But I think the Steelers can find a way to win because I don't know what to make of Jake Browning. And I think that Pickett will probably do what he usually does, like 13 for 20, 14 for 22, maybe the one interception. He'll have the one okay drive, and it'll be like a 17-13 kind of game, something like that. And the Steelers, other than last week, they've won like all those games. The Steelers have won every game this year. There's 6 wins. They're all the same way. And they were about to have the 7th win the same way. But in this one, because it's Jake Browning, I think Pittsburgh wins. And the one thing I will say, Brad, to your point on the Steelers schedule, I think they can tread water again to go 9-8 because they've got the Cardinals and they've got the Patriots at home back to back. So if you win here,
don't sleep on the Cardinals, by the way. Don't sleep on them.
If you're going to tell me the Patriots are next, I mean, come on.
No, I didn't say anything about the Patriots. I said the Cardinals. The Cardinals are playing decent.
Yeah, but the Cardinals
are definitely a different element with Kyler Murray in the fold. That's for sure.
Yeah, I maybe.
They only lost by 5 to the Texans, who are playing really well right now.
And they've got to win over Dallas. I understand, but I still think Pittsburgh, they can get to 9. If they win here, I would feel a little bit more confident in them getting to 9. And, I think it's established 9 might make it in the AFC right now. We'll get to that certainly in a second, but that's my thoughts. But Anthony, thank you for tuning in. Let's go to another game here, another fascinating matchup. Speaking of the AFC North, Brad, let's stay in the division because 2 other teams that are kind of in the same boat almost. Interesting week here. The Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns. The Denver Broncos, so fascinating to me because, Brad, I remember about a month and a half ago, right, give or take, we spoke about the Denver Broncos, and basically it was like Rome is burning, or the Bronx is burning, to that old documentary but the ESPN did about the 78 Yankees, I think it was, right? And the Broncos were 1-5, and we were doubting about Russell Wilson, what he had left, Sean Payton, why did he go there? And I look up, and the Denver Broncos, after winning on Sunday night against the Vikings, are 5-5, and as crazy as it sounds, they're alive in this AFC playoff picture, and they're playing against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland, who skated by with a win against the aforementioned Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Cleveland Browns are 7-3, but it's the Denver Broncos to me who are the hot team, and it's the Denver Broncos here at home who are 2.5-point favorites against the Cleveland Browns. And I'm curious, Brad, where you go here, because these 2 teams are kind of playing similar football, but for different reasons. And really fascinated if you go to the upset special, because I kind of feel like you will here in this matchup, and you'll probably tell me why. But I'm very curious because, again, the Denver Broncos, you could make the case, might be the hottest team in the NFL right now, and the Cleveland Browns are 7-3. I mean, so where do you go here in your situation? And for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio.
So, Tom, you said I should consider putting the upset special back on. Ladies and gentlemen, I was very close to making this the lock of the week. I was very close. That's how confident I felt about it. But I'm not going to make it the lock of the week. But I am going to say I feel very confident in the Denver Broncos. And I can't believe I'm saying this after weeks ago, like you said. I mean, after that
We
Miami,
killed them on
I
here. We
remember
killed
coming
them.
on this show and absolutely bashing them, smashing them, everything. And the fact that they went from that all the way to this, and not only that, Tom,
yeah.
I think the most impressive thing is that sometimes when you talk about these winning streaks, you talk about, okay, well, they had an easy schedule.
No, they have not Denver.
No,
not Denver.
that's the most
Kansas
impressive
City,
part.
Minnesota. I mean, these are
They've
tough
beaten
wins.
some good football teams to get here. They have not just beat slouches. So I'm very impressed with the Broncos right now, not only on the offensive side, but on the defensive side. They seem invigorated. I mean, they've been great on the defensive side.
Yep.
And offensively, I know last week wasn't the most impressive showing. They got a lot of field goals, but in the end, one guy.
Listen, you got to give them credit. Kansas City,
Buffalo,
they
got
Minnesota.
The job done. They won. Give credit to a guy who's playing great football right now in Cortland Sutton. Okay, who I have on my fantasy team. He's been making plays and plays and plays. And he's been great. Russell Wilson's been finding him. I mean, their offense has been great. Their running backs have been great between McLaughlin, who's been kind of a sleeper guy. And they have other guys on that roster too who are doing a great job. So I like everything about the Broncos right now. So to me, going against I'm going to say his name wrong again, whatever the heck his name is, okay, the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, the rookie. Okay, last week I completely botched it. Okay, so I'm going to say it I'm not saying it this week. Okay, but in the end,
just call him DTR.
DTR, all right. I think I called him an NBA player last week. All right, but anyway, listen, that's what I think of him. Okay, irrelevant. That's what I think of him. Okay, and I know he beat the Steelers last week, Tom, but he won 13-10. It wasn't like we did anything crazy. I know he had a nice last drive. That's cute. Okay, I know the one thing I will say is that I do know that the Cleveland Browns have a good defense, but their offense is so anemic, and I don't think they're going to do much with DTR. Okay, that at this point I feel really confident in Denver, and I just like the way they're playing.
Yeah, no problem about that. No, totally. I could totally you see where you're going with that. But Chris, again, another interesting matchup. The Denver Broncos, 4 wins in a row. And then the Cleveland Browns win against Pittsburgh, despite their quarterback that they spent, again, I mean, a $250 million on out for the season. But they're 7-3 in a playoff spot. But it's the Denver Broncos here who are the favorites. They're playing great football. They got 3 quality wins of the 4 wins. They're probably the hottest team in the league right now. And, what do you think here in a matchup? I mean, Cleveland wins here. They're on the road, go 8-3. They solidify, but they still got the defense. But if Denver wins here, it becomes a whole cluster in this AFC wildcard picture.
Yeah, you know what? This is like a classic matchup. You got 2 really good defenses right now because Denver's defense has been great the last 5-6 weeks. Offenses both not great. Obviously, Cleveland, like you said, with the rookie quarterback, they're not going to put up a lot of points. And Denver's offense too, with Russell Wilson, they're like doing just enough to win. So I think it's going to be a low-scoring game with 2 really good defenses going at it. But Denver playing at home, and like you said, I think they're the hottest team right now. The last 4 weeks they've won, and their defense has been playing good ever since they lost to Miami. That the big 70 whatever score that was.
Yeah, it was 70-21 or something like that.
Since then, they've been really good. They've had one other game where they gave up 28 points, but other than that, it's been like 21 or less, for their last 5-6 games. So I'm going to go with Denver playing at home. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but I'm going to say Denver wins this one.
Well, that's kind of been the story of these teams. And, Justin, again, Denver 4 straight wins. Cleveland, those 7-3, and they're right there in this AFC North and certainly locked into a playoff spot. And they could certainly open some eyes further with a win here on the road. But again, Denver's played some good football. They've turned things around. And if you believe in momentum, they have it. But I'm curious here in what your thoughts are and more in a 2.5-point spread between these teams here on a 4:05 Sunday matchup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you gotta love the way the things have turned around for Sean Payton and the Broncos. They've really flipped the switch on defense. Russell Wilson's playing some good football. Like Brad said, Cortland Sutton's been really, really good for them, and it just seems like the chemistry is building, and they're on this momentum where they're going up against some of the softer teams. They beat the Vikings, an average 500 kind of team. They're 6-5 now. But you go up against this Cleveland team. Yeah, sure, they're 7-3, but now they're without their quarterback, and obviously, unfortunately, I just don't think DTR is ready for the moment. I know they got the win last week, but Pittsburgh couldn't move the ball offensively, really. And I do expect Denver to have a little more success, especially running the football. Getting to the outside receivers. Judy's played a little bit better of late too. Ultimately, I think Denver's just the better team here, and I think they're gonna end up coming away with a victory.
We'll certainly see here. And, I guess, Brad, as we always say on Sportswire, I guess if you believe in momentum, the Denver Broncos have it. And it's hard to argue with that. Them at home, even though I know they've struggled early in the year at home, but the way they're playing, you got to give them a lot of credit. 3 of the last 4 wins. It's Kansas City. It's Buffalo in Buffalo, where Denver never wins, and then winning against the hot Minnesota team. Minnesota was that hot team. So I kind of feel like here in this matchup, Denver wins because, again, their defense has been very good. Like I think Chris said the same thing. Their defense, even with the 70-point game, if you actually look at without the 70-point game, Denver's giving up only 22 a game. So that tells you that if they give up 20 or less, they win. And I think they can do that here against a Cleveland offense that still is challenged. So I kind of think here at the end of the day, Denver finds a way to pull it out. And they get to 5 wins in a row, although we'll certainly see. A lot of these games are very similar. This is where it gets really interesting. But I think that Denver wins here. But, Brad, let's go to another matchup that I find to be very fascinating. Also, a 1 o'clock matchup. That is the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. Now, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. I actually struggled with this matchup, and I'm curious about where you go, because Jacksonville is the better football team, but Houston against Jacksonville, they're the better football team. So I'm really curious what you think, because obviously there is still playoff implications here, and it's Jacksonville in Houston, and Jacksonville is 1.5-point favorites. Although, again, if you look at the recent history between these teams, which we've documented, you might want to say it should be the other way around. So I'm curious, because something tells me here that you might actually put that upset alert on the board.
Well, you're wrong again, because I'm not going to. And listen, I'll admit though, Tom, I thought this was one of the harder picks of the week. This game definitely gave me a hard time. There was a few others that gave me a hard time, especially with the spreads. There was a couple that gave me a hard time, but this one did when it came to just picking it in general. I really like the way Houston's playing. I mean, you want to talk about a quarterback that the New York Jets, wish they had. Talk about C.J. Stroud. I mean, he's been phenomenal. He looks everything like a star quarterback should. I mean, he's done everything, great throwing ability, great movement. I mean, he's been awesome. I really can't name one thing he hasn't done well. But in the end, you said it, Tom. I know Jacksonville's a better team. And I think that, I'm going to be honest with you, Tom, and I think the Jaguars kind of know that little Houston Texan current streak against them where they've been playing well. And just remember the smackdown that they gave them early in the season.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't just a win. It was a smackdown. They smacked them. Okay, so I think that with that all being said, and also the intensity of this game, this is a very important game.
Absolutely.
I do think that the better team is going to show up. I think that Jacksonville will show up.
Houston wins. They're in first place because of the tiebreaker,
Yeah, so again, this is also for first place. Good point. So I think that with all that being said, with the experience of the Jaguars, with Lawrence and obviously, all the rest of the roster and the coaching staff, there's a lot of experience there. I just think that Jacksonville is going to take this game and they're going to play their best football that they've played against Houston in a long time. They're going to find a way to play well. And again, they're the better team.
Fair points here. And obviously, Chris, again, Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars. Houston, I think at the end of the day, have been probably one of the more unlikely stories in the league. I mean, certainly after last year and their struggles, to be 6-4, have to give them a lot of credit. But unlike the Jets, they found a quarterback. I mean, what a difference, right? Finding a quarterback does, right? Because the Houston Texans have found a quarterback, and it's almost like they're back to where they were a few years ago, and they're right there, and they've got a victory, a huge feather in their cap early in the year over the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're at home here But it's the Jacksonville Jaguars who are the favorites here, 1.5-point favorites here, 1:00 matchup. And I'm really curious here and what you think in a battle of first place in the AFC South between those Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans.
Well, you know what? Since the Texans beat the Jaguars have won 6 out of 7.
Only
So
the
right now
49er game is the loss.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're playing really good. Their only loss was the San Fran game where San Fran is just San Fran, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, this one's for first place. I think this is where Jacksonville shows up, and they're going to cause a lot of problems for the rookie quarterback, CJ Stroud, and they're going to win this game. I know Houston's plays really well against Jacksonville. I think they've won 4 out of the last 5 against them as well.
I wouldn't quite say it's Jets-Patriots territory, but it's definitely a mini.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not.
But Jacksonville's got to turn things around here. So I'm gonna go with Jacksonville.
And if you think about it, Jacksonville wins this game, and they certainly actually solidify themselves to actually get home field in the AFC. They could very well get that. But a lot on the line here, Justin. Again, the Houston Texans, and they found a way to pull a victory out against Arizona. We mentioned the Cardinals a few minutes ago, and Houston's definitely played decent football. They've been, I think, one of the more unlikelier surprises in the league this year at 6-4. And Jacksonville is where we thought they were, but Houston does have that huge victory, and it certainly means a lot here because they're at home, and certainly if they win, they'll be in first place in the AFC South via that tiebreaker. So I'm curious here in what you think, even though it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 1.5-point favorites here on the road, 1:00 matchup.
So I'm going to date this back to the start of 2014.
Okay.
The Texans are 16-3 against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's close. Then it's almost Jet Patriot territory. Then that's almost.
And I think we're gonna make it 17-3. I think the Houston Texans are gonna win this game because they're gonna be able to run the football. Devin Singletary. I think CJ Stroud's gonna clean up the turnovers a little bit, and I just don't think there's really gonna be much of an answer for Tank Dell. I mean, the way he's blossomed into a number 1 receiver for the Texans, along with Robert Woods. I mean, they've got so many weapons on offense, and their defense is playing very well too. And I think ultimately, I haven't been all that impressed with Trevor Lawrence, and Travis Etienne's really not run the ball well over the last couple of weeks of the season. So I see the Texans winning this.
It's interesting that you said that about the turnovers, and even though I'm gonna actually agree with you, last week CJ Stroud threw 3 interceptions, but prior to that, he only threw 2 interceptions the entire season. So if you think about it, his TD to INT ratio was one of the best in the league, 7.5 to 1. 7.5 to 1, almost 3,000 passing yards. He's at the top of the league in almost all categories. And you pretty much hit the nail on the head why I'm picking the Houston Texans, because I just think there's something about the Texans and Jaguars. The Texans get up for this game. Even last year, if you think about it, the Texans beat Jacksonville, if I'm not mistaken, last year. And, there's something about, I don't know why it is, but sometimes, Brad, you've seen this, you've played, where one team has another team's number. And I don't know why here in this spot, but I kind of think Houston, I know they haven't looked impressive the last 2 weeks against the Bengals and the Cardinals, but I kind of think you're at home. This is kind of their moment. And even though Jacksonville's 7-3, I know they've won 6 of 7. I haven't been that impressive. Maybe aside from the Buffalo win, maybe the Buffalo and the Pittsburgh wins were good. But other than those wins, were you that impressed with Jacksonville? I mean,
not really.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they will because of that division. But I something tells me here, I think what a difference a quarterback makes, and a young quarterback. And I think kind of this is the moment where he might rise. I know he had a bad week last week, but I think he might rise to the occasion here and actually play really well to the way he did a few weeks ago against Tampa. So something tells me here that I kind of think Houston pulls it out. It'll probably be another close game. It'll be at home. It'll be a loud crowd there in Houston. They'll be up for it. So I kind of think here that Houston pulls it out here, even though Jacksonville is the favorite. So I'll go for a couple more games, the more interesting ones. So, Brad, let's go to an interesting one here. I got a couple of 425s I want to go to here before I go to the Giants. And I don't know why, but I'll do it because they're a local team. But, let's go to a 425 game, which I really find interesting where you go between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. Because speaking of teams that obviously did not look that great last week, it looked very average, was the Kansas City Chiefs. And certainly the Philadelphia Eagles, they had a lot to play for, maybe kind of like the Houston Texans did. And the Las Vegas Raiders, who a lot of people were kind of, when I was like, well, they'll give Miami a game last week and they're playing inspired. Antonio Pierce, and they hung in there and they're back at home. And by the way, the Las Vegas Raiders, I believe, have won 4 consecutive games at home here. And this is a really interesting matchup because the Chiefs and the Raiders, there's something on the line here still for the Raiders. Although they probably won't make the playoffs, but the Chiefs are looking to bounce back. They've got a lot of things that they want to play for. And I'm curious where you go here because I think it's a very high spread once again. Kansas City is 9-point favorites. And the way Kansas City, one thing we've learned on Sportswire over the past few years, Kansas City, not a good team against the spread. So I'm curious, Brad, as for those that are listening and watching, why you might actually put that upset alert on the board here because of the spread, not because of why you think the Raiders will win, but because of that 9-point spread. And Taylor probably won't be in the building. 4:25 p.m. game. Chiefs, Raiders. Tell us why you got that upset on the board.
So, Tom, you got me on this one. So I am agreeing with you. Come on, where is it? There we go. All right, now you got me on this one. I'm actually riding with you on the spread. I think this is actually a really good one, and one of the ones I felt good about is that I'm going to take the Raiders with the spread. And I do think that, first of all, I'm not going to ride into your point about winning 4 straight games at home, especially the last 2 being against the Giants and the Jets. Those are like, to me, mulligans because
Michael Palace said that the Jets couldn't beat an XFL team. That's what he's saying. So if you go with that,
I mean,
tries to give you a good laugh.
I mean, I guess I just won't comment on that. But anyway, what I will say though, okay, is that the Raiders, did prove me wrong last week. I picked them to lose against the 12-point spread, and they covered the spread against Miami.
So did I.
And hung in there. So I give them a lot of respect for doing that on the road. And I just think, let's go to another player that has, we talked about, what was his name from Cleveland, D whatever R. I mean, listen, let's talk about MVS, who can't catch the damn ball. I mean, come on. I mean, really, he literally gave him one of the best throws I've seen in a long time, Mahomes, and he dropped the ball. How do you drop the ball? They would have won the game. I mean, unbelievable. That was just one of the worst drops I've seen in a while from a great, amazing throw. I mean, the guys who I saw on the football field locally in Plainview playing football might have caught that. So that's kind of the reason why I'm picking the Raiders to cover. I do think the Chiefs find a way to win this game close. Maybe a late field goal wins it for them. Okay, but I think that the Raiders will compete, will fight hard. I do like the fact that they're playing for their coach, and they have played very hard for him. Okay, so I like all those things with the fact that I am so disgusted. I'm disgusted that, the Chiefs wide receiving core is as bad as it is. They can't catch the damn ball. I mean, they can't catch the ball. They can't make plays. I mean, it's been really bad. And, Kelsey didn't have his best game last week. I mean, he had to drop himself. So there's a lot of issues on that offense for the Chiefs. And I do think they're going to do better this week, but I just don't think they have enough firepower to really beat the Raiders. I will say one thing that concerns me is that the Chiefs' defense has been elite. They can possibly
their defense is definitely – it's not like the Chiefs teams we've seen in prior years where they basically –
This is one of the best defense, I think, if maybe the best defense that
Justin made that point in our group on Monday. He had brought up the fact that the Chiefs' defense has been elite. I mean, that was exactly his line.
100%. 100%. So, I mean, that's the only thing that would worry me with this, but I feel confident that the Raiders are going to cover.
Okay, and we'll certainly get to my opinion. But, again, Chris, interesting matchup. Chiefs coming off a tough loss Monday night. Raiders back at home. Raiders have played really good at home. I know the opponents have been a lot to be desired, but they've got 4 wins in a row at home. I think the Patriots is also one of those games they won at home also, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, so, teams that really aren't elite, okay, Green Bay's played a little better, but still their record to be desired. But, again, it is an old AFC West rivalry. As one of our listeners reminded me this morning, he said, you never know in these rivalry games. And the Chiefs and Raiders is a rivalry. And the Chiefs, though, here are 9-point favorites on the road, 425. And what do you think?
You know what? I look at it this way. I look at last week's game with all the drops, and Kelsey fumbled in the red zone also.
Yep.
They should have beaten Philly because Philly did not play their best game, obviously, again.
No.
But Philly comes out winning. But I don't see the Chiefs having that many drops again and fumbles and pick and interception in the red zone as well by Mahomes. So I think they're going to win this game, and I think they're going to cover because they've been owning the Raiders the last whatever it's been the last few years. They've won, I think, the last 5. So I think Kansas City's going to win, and I think they're going to cover. I think this is their bounce back game because their defense is going to take control of the game. I don't see the Raiders scoring many points, and the Chiefs are going to kind of break out offensively.
Could certainly be the case. And Justin, again, I guess to Brad's point, you would say conversely, Raiders haven't beaten anybody, but the Chiefs, there was a bad image you might have in your mouth based on the way they played offensively. Maybe it's what the doctor ordered, but I still will have my opinion. But until then, your opinion here: Chiefs 9-point favorites against the Raiders on the road, 425.
Yeah, it's officially panic time with the Chief offense right now. I mean, they really don't have any reliable receivers. Obviously, they have Travis Kelce at tight end, who is obviously arguably one of the best of all time, and he's even had his fair share of struggles of late, right? The drop ball, the fumble in the red zone. He's even had his fair share of troubles. But, I mean, the number of drops between Valdez-Scantling, between Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, they just don't have a lot of those options at wide receiver. Rashee Rice has been okay. They've gotten McCole Hardman involved a little bit of late, but, even he doesn't even have that much of a role in the offense. And Patrick Mahomes is just trying to do it all. And unfortunately, it's just not working. And in this situation, with the way the Raiders have played for Antonio Pierce over the first couple of weeks, they even played a good ball game against the Dolphins, lost a close one. I think it ended up being by a touchdown. But so I like the Raiders here. Obviously I think the Chiefs are going to win, but that's a big number, and I that's not a number I like. And the Chiefs, especially in the Mahomes era, they've been historically bad in terms of covering those numbers.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I'm glad you said that. It's a high
number, and I'm just not a fan of it. I do think the Chiefs win, but I like the Raiders to cover here.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that because we've been on the air for 3 years on Sportswire doing the live shows. I know Brad and I were doing the people would do before the video, but that's before you guys. But the Chiefs, to me, have never been good on this. If you look at them, their record, sure, the regular season, they're 13-3, 14-2, 13-4. But against the spreads, they're always a lot less in terms of their winning percentage. And I think here it's a rivalry game and the Raiders are playing for something. I don't think the Raiders win this game, but you have to throw out the spread here. I think 9 is high. If you would have told me 6, you would have told me 6.5. I would have said, you know what? I like Kansas City here, but I think 9 is kind of high on the road. Raiders have been playing much better. I know the opponents, it's again, the Patriots, the Packers, the Jets, the Giants, but your record, you won it, and since Pierce has coached the team as the head coach, they've looked better. I mean, maybe you count for something. McDaniels, players didn't like him. There was a revolt there. I know it's still, also had a quarterback change there. And, Jimmy G, I think Justin and a few others correctly point out he really overrated. That number showed. But I just think there's something here and that the Raiders can at least make it interesting. And it's a rivalry game. And I think that you have to throw it out the window there. All right. So, most of us are on the same page. I think Chris had Kansas City, but Brad, let's go to another matchup, which I really think that this should have been at least the Sunday night game, which is the 425 game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Buffalo Bills. Now, I would think we're in flex territory. Maybe one more week to flexing, but this should have been the Sunday night game or the Monday night game. I don't know why this was, and but that's here nor there. But the Philadelphia Eagles, I think Chris hit the nail on the head on them. They've won. They find ways to win, but they haven't been impressive. But they're the only team with only one loss in the league. Then there's the Buffalo Bills, who changed coordinators, and they look like $1 million, but they were playing the Jets. So, obviously, we spoke a lot about the Jets tonight. So it'll be interesting to see where you go in this matchup because the Eagles are field goal favorites. They are at home against the Buffalo Bills, who are playing for their playoff lives. And I'm curious what you think here because You obviously are playing for your life. You're playing for your season. You are 15 games back, and you really have to start thinking about taking chances here. And I'm really curious if you think about taking a chance here because you like what you saw from the Bills last week, and you know you got to gamble eventually at some point because you have to make up ground.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you gamble, Tom, like I tried to do last week a little bit,
Like Dan Campbell did on Thursday.
fall flat on your face. And ladies and gentlemen, I did nothing short of fall flat on my face last week. So, logic is going to try to win me over. And last week I tried to be a little, let's just say swift with my picks. But anyway, with that being said, I am going to take the home team in this one, the Philadelphia Eagles, to win at home. Tom said it. The Bills played the Jets last week. I mean, I know that they looked better at times, but the Bills' offense was on the field the whole game. I mean,
Yeah,
they had a million chances. I mean, they literally stepped on the field, then stepped off for 2 seconds and stepped right back on. I mean, it was like, okay, here's another try. Here's another try. Do it again. Do it again. I mean, when you give a team a lot of tries, it's like in basketball, it's like giving a team offensive rebounds. Like, just giving a lot of offensive rebounds. Eventually, they're going to score. I mean, at some point, they're going to score.
New shot clock.
Exactly, over and over again. So, listen, when you do that for a team, I mean, they're going to look a little better. I know that they had some positives, but at the same time, I mean, they're going against a defense that's demoralized because their offense can't do anything. They're exhausted. Ladies and gentlemen, the Philadelphia Eagles don't have that problem. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to score points. They are going to stay on the field. They are going to run the ball. Their quarterback is going to get first downs by either running it or getting his butt pushed, to make sure he gets over.
That was referenced during the Jet game, by the way. That was referenced.
Yeah, the tush push. So anyway, it's going to happen. Okay, so they are going to stay on the field longer, which is going to make Buffalo's time on the field less, which will make it harder for them to produce more, consistently.
Yep.
So I think with all that being said, I really like Philadelphia. Obviously, they are at home. Philadelphia is not an easy place to play. Buffalo, is coming off a win where they feel good about themselves, but should they really feel that good? And I just think that combination going into this game where Philadelphia is, again, even though they're the best team, still playing for something, still trying to make sure they get that 1 seed, which they're looking easily to do. But at the same time, this is not the team to let down. They're going to play at a high level. I think they're going to come out and do it. And Buffalo, I just feel like they're at a high where they feel so great about beating the Jets. Woo-woo. And then they're going to go into this and get beat down. I just think Philadelphia is going to win by a decent amount.
All right, fair enough. Chris, it's a fascinating matchup. I really wish this would have been the Sunday night game or the Monday night game. But then again, to be fair, Buffalo's played a lot in prime time, and so was Philadelphia. I guess we give other teams a shot, I suppose. I still wish we would flex.
Not the Bears.
Yeah.
I understand that, but you got Baltimore on Sunday night. People want to see Baltimore against the Chargers. Our old friend Anastasia Racina and her Chargers, although who cares about them? Minnesota, I'm not even going to talk about those games, but they are what they are. But Chris, again, Philadelphia is 9-1. Brad is right that they are certainly playing for home field throughout in the NFC playoffs. Buffalo, if you believe in firing a coordinator, you turn your season around, but you played the Jets. And we spoke a lot about them. So I'm curious on what do you think about your Eagles? You know the Eagles better than anybody. They are a field goal favorite here, 425 against the Bills. And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you guys have said it already with Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, big deal. They beat the Jets. Congratulations. Awesome. Not exactly a tough task, right? So now you're playing against, arguably the best team in the league at 9-1 on the road. And I did say Philly didn't play their best game again, but it looked like the second half of the game, it seemed like their offense was a little bit more in sync than it's been for most of the season. So maybe the OC has finally got some kind of rhythm going with that offense. So that's how I'm looking at it. I think playing back at home, the only thing that kind of makes me think a little bit differently here, not that I think Philly's going to lose, but it's going to be a tight game, is that they might be looking ahead because next week they got San Fran.
Yeah,
that's the big battle, right?
I was going with that. Yep.
But I still think Philly wins this game. I think they're going to win big because Buffalo's defense is banged up. I think they're going to give up a lot of points. I think Philly's defense, is going to have to keep playing as well as they have and shut down Buffalo's offense. So I think Philly wins I don't say easily, but they're going to win by a couple of scores.
Fair enough here. Justin, so fascinated here what you think. Because again, if you're Buffalo, you feel good about yourself, but you're 6-5 and you've really had a disappointing season. You've lost a couple of games. You definitely like to have back Denver at home, Monday Night Jets, week 1. Josh Allen, 4 turnovers. You've definitely had some. I think the Cincinnati game comes to mind. So you've had some games that if you miss the playoffs, you're going to certainly have yourselves to blame. And then you've got the Eagles, who definitely are looking like they could repeat in being the NFC representative in the Super Bowl this year. Although San Francisco will certainly have something to say about it. But what do you think here? It's a 3-point favorite edge here for the Philadelphia Eagles, 425 matchup against those Bills. What do you think?
Sure, Buffalo could feel good about themselves, but then they need to realize that they played the New York Jets last week. And I think one thing that's more dangerous than that is the fact that Philly's not going to feel good about themselves. Yeah, they got the win against Kansas City, but there was a lot of ugliness to this game. And like Chris said, there was a lot of they finally got themselves into a bit of a rhythm in the second half and were able to convert on 2 scoring drives, and that gave them the lead. And the defense, maybe aided by a couple of drops here and there, but the defense got the job done, right? So Philadelphia goes into this game as a much better football team in my mind. And, Jalen Hurts is not really playing. Yeah, he's got more interceptions this year than last year, but he's not as mistake prone as Josh Allen is. And this definitely has a 2-3 interception kind of day written all over for Josh Allen too. So I like the Eagles. I like the Eagles pretty comfortably in this one. I just think the Buffalo Bills are not equipped defensively to handle the smash mouth style of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I just, I think everybody's made the case for me. I kind of always like to at least try to get Brad maybe to pick the upset. But, I mean, I really don't trust Buffalo here. I think Buffalo's body of work this year, I mean, they don't strike me as an elite team. And obviously to go against Philadelphia in Philly, I mean, the way Buffalo has played overall, with the exception of what? I mean, maybe their best win in the season is Miami. I think they beat Miami earlier in the year. That's their best win. But if you look at this Buffalo team, okay, you beat the Jets. Maybe it was what the doctor ordered, but Philadelphia is still Philadelphia. And, we can look at it and say, well, Philadelphia, maybe they're not such a great team in terms of how they've won, but championship-like teams find ways to win. The Philadelphia Eagles find ways to win, whether their defense has a bad day or their offense has a bad day. They find ways to win. And to win a game in Kansas City, a rematch of last year's Super Bowl, I'm very hard-pressed to see how Philadelphia could lose here after winning a game in Arrowhead, despite the way they play. You won in Arrowhead. Not many teams do that this year. I know Detroit did, but that's kind of my story on that. In the interest of time, because we do have one local team left to play, and Ron wants to say he's back. Well, thank you for joining, Ron, because we're going to pick one more game in the interest of time, and it's probably a game we should avoid, but because we have a local team on the schedule still, we're going to pick it. It's the New England Patriots and the New York Giants. I mean, the New York Giants. Speaking of teams, I guess, that have momentum, I mean, I guess there's one team that has a quarterback out there that has a little bit of momentum. If you buy into that, that's the New York Giants. And the New England Patriots, who certainly are playing, obviously, I would imagine that we could very well finally see the end of Bill Belichick. We spoke about that here earlier on Sportswire Radio during the season. I'm sure we'll talk about that here again in the coming weeks and what Robert Kraft winds up doing here. But Giants do have a win. They have won 3 games, and this could be another one of maybe these games that spoils their draft position. I suppose that might be the case. But, Brad, I'm so curious where you go on this, because for whatever reason, the New England Patriots are 3-point favorites here on the road, 1 o'clock. I'm not quite sure. Did Vegas think they were watching Tom Brady on the field? Did they think they were watching the Patriots of a couple of years ago? Because I'm really perplexed here as to why, after what I saw from the Patriots pretty much all season, and actually what I've seen from the Giants, at least in the last week or so, that the New England Patriots are 3-point favorites. And I would have to obviously think here, especially with your disdain, your hatred, but also objectively as an analyst on Sportswire Radio, knowing what you've seen in your limited times. I know you're on a basketball court most of the time. that you'd be putting on that upset alert for us here. So for those that are listening and watching, tell us why the upset alert is going on the board.
Oh, it's coming. All right. To me, this was the easiest one to put up there. I mean,
that's what I thought, Brad.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Tom Bryce. I mean, I think that Vegas got confused on which team was playing at the Meadowlands. They probably thought the Jets were there, and not the Giants, because obviously, if the Jets were there, they should be favored the Patriots because they're probably going to win the game. I know that the Giants are not good. I know the Giants stink. And by the way, can I just say this right now? Shame on those Commanders. Really. I mean, are you guys serious?
Well, they just fired Jack Del Rio today.
Stu Brennan and the whole Commanders organization staff. I mean, you guys got swept by the Giants this year. Are you kidding me? I mean, the Giants stink, and you got swept. And you not only know you lost to who the hell? What's his first name? DeVito, Danny DeVito, Tommy DeVito.
As I continue to say, I'm almost certain I know a Tommy DeVito. I actually know an Olivia DeVito. I actually checked. I actually know an Olivia DeVito on. I don't want to say her address in Brooklyn, but I'm almost certain I know a Tommy DeVito for sure.
I mean, you lost to Tommy damn DeVito, okay, and you lost to the Giants twice this year. The Giants have 3 wins, and they have 2 against you. How do you feel, Commanders? I mean, that's embarrassing.
Well, they're probably going to be changing their head coach probably after the season, so I'm sure that's what
they better, because this is terrible. You can't lose.
Ownership came out and said it pretty much without saying it.
You cannot do that. I mean, there's got to be a wholesale of changes in Washington. So terrible. But anyway, in this game, I do think the Giants actually do win. And the reason why is actually somewhat because of what we saw from Tommy DeVito last week. Okay? Tommy DeVito looked okay. Saquon Barkley ran the ball pretty well.
You hit the Saquon Barkley. They have one weapon. Get him the ball.
And that might be the only weapon on the field for either team, right? Because the Patriots don't have any weapons, and neither do the Giants really, except for him. So he's probably he is the best player on the field, and I just think he's the only one that will make a difference in this game. So I'm going to take I know everybody's gonna think, well, Belichick might prepare to stop him.
What's he prepared for?
What is Belichick gonna do? All right, at this point, he can't do anything.
Listen, we spoke about it on shows. Without Tom Brady, Bill Belichick is nothing special in this league. His career record
doesn't do much here, and the Patriots won't score many points, as we all know. So I'm gladly taking the Giants with the 3 points. I'll take them. I just think this is really foolish that they are 3-point underdogs. I mean, at least make it 1 point. 3 points. I mean, damn. What have the Patriots done to deserve this? The only team they deserve 3 points on is the Jets, because we know they're going to beat them.
Well, that'll happen, I'm sure, later on in the season. And I see all of a sudden now people tuning into Sportzwire. I see it here on my screen. It's kind of so funny. But, Chris, again, I really don't understand, as our last pick of the night here, that the New England Patriots are favorites here on the road against the New York Giants, and the Patriots have arguably been the worst team in the league this year. And the Giants, for all their troubles, won last week, and they've shown flashes at times of being a competitive football team, and this to me should be no different. And I'm really curious where you go here, because I'm still perplexed at how the New England Patriots are actually 3-point favorites here on the road. I don't get it.
You know what I found funny? What Brad was basically burying the Giants because saying how bad the Redskins are for losing to them because they stink, but he's picking them anyway against the Patriots, which I find that kind of funny. But
yeah, it was funny.
The Commanders, not the Redskins. The Commanders.
That's okay. I think they should have been the Red. I know that obviously for reasons they have to change.
Right, I'm not politically correct tonight.
They don't deserve.
I personally like the football team. I like the Washington football team.
Oh, I thought it was great when we were the football team because we were on the
get used to that.
I thought it was great, and Brad used to get so mad when I would say the football team on it. When we were doing shows during COVID, Brad used to get so mad about that.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, this is one of those games you don't even want to bet, look at, don't care who wins or loses. But I guess, you know what? I'm going to take the Giants at home getting 3. It'll probably be a low-scoring game because neither offense is going to score much points. I don't think
Giants have scored 149 points this year.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to do what they did last week and score that many points. I don't think Belichick is going to let that happen. So I think it'll be a low-scoring game, field goal game. So I'm going to just go with the Giants only because they're home and they're getting 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those just he ho hum matchups. If
Yeah.
we just for picking because it's local, otherwise I'd skip it. But Justin, I still don't understand the logic how the New England Patriots, the way they've played this year, are favorites, even against the New York Giants and Tommy DeVito. So help me figure out if you say there's a reason why the New England Patriots should be favored here in winning this game. As I guess maybe Vegas is thinking here it's Bill Belichick's quote unquote homecoming back to MetLife Stadium. I suppose maybe I guess.
We're kind of stretching here.
I tried.
Vegas doesn't understand what only I in this room can understand.
Oh boy.
Tommy DeVito, a freaking paisan from Cedar Grove, New Jersey.
Yep.
Does it get any better than that? He's the real story here. And guess what? Tommy freaking DeVito is going to lead the Giants to another win. The Giants are going to be better than the Patriots. Their defense has come alive in the second half of the year, aside from that second Cowboys game. But the Cowboys, again, steamroll everybody at home, as evidenced on Thursday.
Yep.
But, I mean, the Giants have some rhythm going. And obviously, they got the best player on the field, no matter what side you look at, with Saquon Barkley. I mean, the only real threat you could look at on the New England side of the ball is Demario Douglas. But that's really it. And they still haven't announced who the starting quarterback is. I still think it's going to be Mac Jones, but I can't say I'm 100% certain. Bill doesn't give anything away. He doesn't ever say anything. But, man, they're going to be riding the hot hand of Tommy DeVito. Give me the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the way the Patriots have played, and it's funny because this matchup very well could be, well, the Patriots might have one more winnable game on the schedule, the Jets, but I feel like this could be the last winnable game that the Giants definitively have on their schedule. I know they have the Packers, and maybe they have one other game they could win, but I feel like that this is probably the best shot that the Giants have in winning a football game, and I kind of think that the way the Giants played last week, and the Giants being at home, I just don't understand how the Patriots can be favorites here of any sort, the way they've played recently. They have no momentum going into this game. It'd be different if they played and you felt good about them. And I don't see any way possible how there's any momentum here that the Patriots have to go in here. So I'm going to go with the Giants, the New York Football Giants, although it'll probably kill the Giants draft position. But I kind of think here that this is the Giants, although maybe the Rams game, maybe they could win the game against the Rams. I suppose maybe that's a winnable game, but we'll have to find out. And Ron wants to say Giants are an easy win. Well, you got the Giants, I think, in 2 weeks from now, but let's see where your team ends up. Your team's playing well, but you have to travel to MetLife. So we'll see if the Giants are motivated there. So let's see. Your team's trying to get back into it, but I think the Giants win here, and there isn't much more else to say about this game. Maybe you watch it for Barkley, Belichick's quote-unquote return, but that's what we thought here. We didn't pick all the games. We wanted to talk about the Jets, get that off our chest, talk about some other things here, but we'll pick maybe more of the games here next week. We'll get your thoughts on here, and also you can always check us out anytime on sportswireradio.org, our brand new website. So click the watch now, the listen live button. Check out all our new shows on YouTube, past, present, and future. We're over 400 subscribers on YouTube, so we're getting a lot of new people. So continue to watch our shows, and also check us out on Tumblr because we have a Sportswire Radio blog. The blog is back. The blog is in full effect. We're getting a lot of feedback on the blog. We have a Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame now. We got a lot of reactions from that yesterday with Mr. Justin Parsons. I had something like 160 people click on my article. So that's a lot of people there. So we hope that continues. Also, the website has gotten a lot of views in the last couple of days. So I really appreciate the new listeners and the new people tuned in. So we're going to continue that. But in the meantime, that's what we said. You can tell us what you think throughout the week, and always check out all the great shows that we have on sportswireradio.org, including the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals. So I'm going to go with closing thoughts here for tonight. Justin, I'm going to go with you first. I'm going to give you the floor, give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say? I'm sure you'll give us your 3 locks of the week and more. So the floor is yours, my friend. Fire away.
All right. So speaking of the locks, has anyone paid attention to these Iowa over-unders over the last 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah, Nebraska. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So today it was set at 25.5, a new record yet again. It feels like the last 4 games have each set a record. And guess what? 13-10 was the final. In pure Iowa form, they went under yet again.
Well, they're going to get blown out by probably 30 next week in the championship game.
Yeah, that's they don't allow a ton of points. That's the thing. If we're being honest, because that leads me into my next point of Ohio State versus Michigan tomorrow. Obviously, what decides the Big Ten East and what's going to determine who's going to play Iowa in the Big Ten championship.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, even though Ohio State and Michigan can put up points, whoever plays Iowa, they're probably going to win 17-13 again too. Because you know what? Iowa's got a great defense.
They do. They do.
And one thing we can hang our hats, and you know what? I think Ohio State and Michigan is going to be a low-scoring game because these two teams have excellent defenses.
Well,
and
I know who Michael Palace is rooting for.
And I got to be honest. Between J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord, we're going to see some sloppy quarterback play. I really think.
Sure.
McCarthy over the last couple of weeks has played like absolute crap. Kyle McCord, I think, has been really inconsistent all year long, even though I think he's gotten a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. But the inconsistencies, the ups and the downs, I think could make this game really about the running game. And that's really what's killed Ohio State over the last couple of years with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. They've been able to run for 250 the last couple of years. And I think that's been the Achilles heel. But with Ohio State having a better run defense this year, I really think that they can maybe neutralize that. And hopefully, Travion Henderson, really has a big game himself running the football against what is a super stingy Michigan defense. So, it's gonna be a low scoring battle. Hopefully the Buckeyes pull this one out because listen, with this defense, they could beat anybody. Yep. They really could beat anybody with this defense. Obviously, the quarterback play is concerned, but overall, that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to. Obviously, with the games on Sunday, we'll see where everybody else shapes out on, in the playoff picture. And by the way, the only lock of the week: hammer all Tommy DeVito overs in this game. You can follow me on Twitter at JGNelly12 and on Instagram at JGNelly91.
Excellent. Certainly Cedar Grove, New Jersey will certainly be well represented.
15 minutes from where I grew up.
Well, you probably run into the guy before. Probably ran into him,
Wouldn't
right?
be surprised.
I wouldn't doubt it for sure. And great stuff, Justin, and looking forward to having you back next week and all your hard-hitting analysis here. And Chris, I gave you the floor, and I'm looking forward to continuing to play the Liftoff Jets. Got a chance to hear that. Also, you and Patrick and the Talking Rivals really enjoyed that. I'll continue to have that in the rotation because I will be back live on Sportswire now today and Sunday. Actually, I'm live, I think, the whole week, actually, consecutively. So looking forward to all that. And anything else I want to give you for your closing thoughts, and the floor is yours, my friend, and fire away.
Tom, thank you, guys. Great show, as always. It's going to be an interesting weekend. Obviously, Michigan, Ohio State. We know the stakes are up for that one.
Yep.
And then Sunday, the NFL, like right now, from now until obviously the last week, it's going to be every week we're probably going to see a changing of, the wild card picture and even some of the divisions. So it's going to be fun. This is the NFL right now. This is the best time right now.
The last 6 weeks of the season. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely going to be some big games. And we're still waiting on some news with free agency and stuff like that. Hopefully this week coming up, we'll get some more news on some free agents. And we'll be talking about it. Patrick and I on Talking Rivals. Unfortunately, Sharman and I will be talking about the Jets next week.
And Sharman even used the word this week, stupid. He actually used the word stupid in describing the Jets. I listened to the show today, and he actually used the word stupid because it's unlike Sharman to use even the word stupid in the last 3 years you've been doing the show.
It's getting that way. It's seriously getting that way with the
No,
Jets.
it's abominable. It's abominable.
It's frustrating, and it sucks because this was laid out for us this year with every other team having problems too. We could have, but anyway, that's the Jets, and that's the life of a Jets fan.
It sucks.
Yeah. So you can catch me at CP7NY also on Instagram and Threads, and at Talking Rivals, and at Liftoff Jets as well. And we'll see you guys next week.
And I've been adding some clips for people on Instagram and Threads to check us out on the new website. So I've been doing that. You guys have been in there. I've thrown in our buddy Neil Villapiano, also the Pinstripe Chronicle guys. So I try to do that. And our guys, be a work in progress guys, Glenn Abbott and Brent Piles. They've been, so great supporters of us on Sportswire. They've been with us almost since the beginning. So I want to make sure I can do that on the other platforms to give people a chance to tune in. And I enjoy that. But obviously great stuff. Happy Thanksgiving. Let's certainly hope that Sunday will be a good slate of games and we'll have something to talk about less depressing than the Jets to open the show here with us with the rest of the guys. But we certainly didn't save the best for last, but we saved the biggest for last, and the brute force Bradley Weiss, who I know is going to give us some Dolan time. Maybe we'll talk about the Golden Eagles. Obviously have a game today. They were in Manhattan. As I said a few days ago, we were speaking actually off the air on Tuesday during the game. One of our buddies was on the call. Another person who was also on the call we know very well, so maybe you'll talk about that and more. So I turn it over to you, the brute force, Brad Weiss. You definitely know the drill by now at this point, so fire away.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the show. Thank you, Justin, Chris, of course, Randy Dillon, for another great week of the show as well, and all the supporters out there supporting us. Anthony Finkel, shout out to him. All right, good to see you. And
yes, he's alive. He's alive.
It's always good. So I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving as well. It was a great holiday, certainly, and some great food. So I'm definitely in a great mood from that. So thank you, and hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving. You can follow me on social media at Brad Weiss 20 on Twitter or X, searching Bradley Weiss on Facebook, and then on Instagram at Coach Brad Weiss or at BWeiss20. So I'm going to quickly go over my New York Knicks first. I am going to talk about their nice win today. They actually came back from down 21 in the third quarter against Miami in the in-season tournament. The team that they were eliminated by in the second round last year, and came back to win 100-98. One thing that was good in this game is that Julius Randle sat a lot of the fourth quarter. He came back in for about, the last 3 to 4 minutes. But at that point, the Knicks were already back in the game, so a lot of the dirty work was done by the bench. And Emmanuel Quickley was great. Jalen Brunson obviously was great. So it was a good effort for the Knicks today against a good Miami Heat team who's been playing really well recently. Yep. So shout out to the Knicks. And James Dolan, obviously, I think is being outshined by Woody Johnson at this moment. We should be more mad with Woody Johnson than James Dolan. But at the same time, we all know as the season wanes, I'll get more on Dolan for what he does. But, right now he's kind of safe at the moment. To go forward as well, I want to give a shout-out to Level Up Long Island. We're starting up our fall-winter season. This is our new shirt. Our new slogan is Be About It, which is really cool. I really like it.
Fall's almost over, We're actually only about 3.5 weeks left to fall, so it's really winter you're starting.
Yeah, fall-winter season. So now it's winter going into the winter. So,
right, yeah.
We are excited for that. Be About It's our new slogan. So a lot of our kids are going to be wearing that. And I think it's really cool. And then we have, a lot more fun stuff going on. We actually did a clinic today on Black Friday, which people enjoyed. So I was happy to see that.
I think that's good. People want to get away from going to the mall. Like I went to the mall today. For the first time ever went to the Staten Island Mall during Black Friday because I had to get out of the house. And I was like, wow, I was like, okay, now I see why people don't want to go to these malls during Black Friday. Because I went and it was like just to buy a pair of pants.
It's definitely crazy out there. I went to Walmart for a minute and it was crazy.
So, I was in the mall for an hour and a half and I'm like, okay, I got to go. Let me go fall asleep before the Jet game, which is what I did.
But anyway, with the clinic today, it went well. And we had our old buddy, actually, I shouldn't say our old buddy, our buddy James DeSimone. Was on hand helping us work it, so he's doing well. Mr. Cordy,
get him out there in the court and play. We hope he,
Yeah, no, he said, listen, he's getting good practice reps in. He said he had a good 26-point performance on the scout team, so he's been doing good. But with that being said, Mr. Cordia, by the way, don't sleep on them. They've been really good this season.
He's a good program. It's a good program for sure.
Yeah, and they've been very good. So watch out for them in Division III. I think they can make some noise. But speaking of teams that made a little noise this week in Division III, and that's my St. Joseph's Long Island Golden Eagles, who, of course, traveled to Tom's alma mater, John Jay, in the middle of Manhattan, and got a win on the road, which is always a good win at John Jay.
Homecoming for John Jay. It was homecoming, yep.
Yeah. With that being said, though, me and Tom talked about it, and I'm definitely going to talk about it. I'm happy with my Golden Eagles and what they're doing, but I am a little concerned. I'm a little concerned when it comes to how they're using the depth of their team. Their starting five is obviously a very good starting five. I like the addition of Terran Roy. He's been great.
He's lanky. He's a lanky player who's a two-way player.
Yeah, I think he's a good fit for that starting lineup. I think, obviously alongside Malloy, alongside,
Tabata,
again,
Xavier Allen.
Tabata, of course, yeah, Allen. He fits well. And Tabata, as I've said for years, I'm going to say it again. I think is the key, is the guy. Yep. Even though Allen and Malloy have been kind of the big scorers in the last recent games, and I know Tabata ain't slouching, but at the same time, Tabata's the key piece to that team. But at the same time, you got players like Ryan McNeely, who's been huge on this team in the past.
Yeah, McNeely, I think we said off the air, we were watching the game, we were both watching it. I think at times McNeely's been your fourth option the last couple of years.
Yeah, and just to see him, not really, again, I think the most minutes that a bench player had was about 6 to 7 minutes.
I think Tom Bell played a little bit more than that. Right?
Yeah, but again, these are guys that have contributed. These are guys that
we lost some depth on the team. We don't have Liam Shee. We don't have Timmy Hurt. It's a Nick Nemekis is not there. There's some. I got to be honest. It's a team that to turnover. This team is not the team that was together.
But I think they have guys too. I know that it's they have a great starting lineup, and you don't want to take them out. But at the same time, they got McNeely, they got Bell, they got Hoyt, they got Hod, who's one of the newer players on the team.
Esposito.
They got Esposito. They got guys, and they're not really utilizing them. So I'm a little concerned about their depth going forward. I hope that they use them more.
Well, you can't win. You can't win by having three players score.
No, and that's one of the biggest things that we've said, Tom, here on the show over the last few years, is that we've been really impressed with St. Joe's depth. Yep. And that's been helping them win games. And I think this year, they have guys who are capable of being those depth pieces, but they're very heavy on their starting lineup. And we'll see if that ends up, helping or haunting them going forward. But again, they're 3-2. They're going closer to conference play now. So
I think we have two more. We have St. Elizabeth and we have Stevens, and then we go to conference play at Farmingdale on the 6th. So that tells you that we're getting close.
Yeah, so listen, you got a few.
And there he goes. Well,
I thought it was me for a second with the internet trouble.
There you go, Brad. Brad, you're alive, Brad. Brad. It's kind of funny, almost like AI Brad. Hey Brad, you're actually frozen in time, but you know what? We're gonna actually finish what the Brew Force had to say before we sign off. So obviously, look, we'll see what the Golden Eagles do. Obviously, they'll be in action coming up this Saturday, 3:00. They'll be back Wednesday, also 7:00 against Stevens. Conference play is on the 6th. That'll be, I believe, on Thursday in 2 weeks. So we'll look forward to that. Obviously, got a good win. We'll see what happens with them in the future. And you can follow the Brew Force Brad Weiss on Instagram at bweiss20, Brad Weiss20 on Twitter, Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram, and also Bradley Weiss on Facebook. So we hope that the Brew Force will be less frozen next week on the show. But I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. I also want to mention, as Rob Maraska pointed out earlier in the day, my condolences to Ron Hodges, ex-Mets catcher, played 12 years. I didn't realize he played 12 years for the Mets, but he did. He had a standout career, and I want to send my condolences to him, and I'm looking forward to being back here tonight. Cheap plug after Survivor Series with the trendsetter Alan Michaels, who was just in the main event of Tennessee Backyard Wrestling. And Sunday night, I'm with the owner of Resurrection Pro Wrestling right at kickoff for the Sunday night game, 9:00 Eastern time with Joseph Tibbs. Monday, Jackson Sabre of DBW. Tuesday, I'll be in there with the former Black Fox, Jacob Young. So stay tuned for more details. Now, check us out anytime on our new blog, Sportswire Radio at Tumblr. Also, check us out for all the great shows that we have here on sportswireradio.org. That's sportswireradio.org. Anytime, listen to us. And we'll go back to your regularly scheduled programming here in about 25 minutes. But in the meantime, I am here with Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, Chris Bezea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals. And the Brew Force has let us know that his computer is shut down. His computer is randomly gone off. So thank you, Brad. We have plugged you in the meantime, but we'll be back next Friday, same time, same bat channel. But until then, my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And also enjoy the rest of your weekend, your turkey, your football, and everything else in between. And thank you.